Welcome, fellow freaks, geeks, and once again, welcome to Kat's Peeps because I'm joined by my lovely friend Kat. I'm so excited. Today, we're really pumped. We're talking about horror movies because we had a huge and fun and thematic Halloween movie marathon, which we did the same type of marathon last year for last Halloween. So we're continuing on with our new traditions, Kat. Thank you for doing it with me this year again.
Always fun, and it adds for Halloween.
It does. I think it gives it like an extra boost, having a theme and having an official marathon where you have to pick a certain amount of movies and talk about them. And I don't know, I think it adds a lot overall. And what'd you think about the whole thing, the whole marathon? What are your thoughts?
Well, I thought it was enjoyable. That's the word I'm going to use, is enjoyable. It added an extra layer of spookiness to the Halloween season. That is for sure. I was also excited when I was doing all my research. I found out that two of the movies that I chose on my list, The Brood and Let's Scare Jessica to Death, happened to be on a list found in Stephen King's Dance Macabre. It's a nonfiction book, and it's movies released between 1950 and 1980. And he feels that these movies on this list of 100 kind of really add to the horror fantasy genre. And so I was all excited because everybody should know by this point that I love Stephen King.
Yes.
So it's also going to be a list that I'm going to refer to for future marathons.
You'll have to send me, well, I mean, I guess I could buy a copy of the book because I've been wanting it for a while.
And I do think it has been updated to include some more current titles. So that'll be interesting to see because my copy is an older copy.
Well, I'm going to buy a new edition and then I'll send you a picture of the page if it changed.
Yeah, I'll have to see, and a lot of times, when they update, they do, notes or reasons why they revise it, things happen, whatever. Although I did have a few duds. I mean, every marathon we sometimes do get duds, but that's because I expect everything to be great and awesome that I pick or have you suggest to me or someone else suggest to me. But really, except for two movies, I mean, I was pretty satisfied with my choices, and the marathon overall I thought was awesome. I mean, I would pretty much recommend every movie that was on my list, even the ones that were not my favorites, just because, it's subjective, it's art. And what we like, another person might not like, and what we dislike, another person may like. And actually, one of the two was actually recommended to us.
Yes. But
anyway,
we don't know why it was recommended, by the way. But we'll get there when we get there.
That is true. We don't know.
I don't know the reason.
We don't know the reason behind it. It was just recommended based on what we were talking about in one of our live streams. But what about you? What are your overall thoughts?
Well, I will have to kind of go along the lines that you said. It was enjoyable. And also kind of piggybacking off of your layer of spookiness you said it added, I think it was spooktacular overall. But not to do a negative turn on things, last year, it's so hard to live up to last year. And I told you that this would happen. So last year's marathon for our Halloween fun list and our Halloween movie marathon, I actually watched 65 movies. I had only planned to watch 50. I was able to add a lot more. Didn't get to read as much as this year. So my reading was definitely, I surpassed my goals and did way better than last year on reading. But in terms of movies, I actually scheduled less because I knew it would be harder with reading more. But it's not only the volume, but I think the volume has to do with it might affect that, because I have less movies in my whole pool of movies, I might have less movies that I really truly love. Whereas I had so many little gems that I found last year out of 65, there were tons of great things. I was like, yeah. Where it feels like I'm doing that a little bit less. But I think it's just because, like I said, there's less movies to pull from when I'm like looking at like the overall lists.
Well, and also too, you have to consider how many of them were rewatches of your favorites, that your all-time favorite Halloween movies or, scary movies for Halloween time, as opposed to watching brand new movies that, like they sound awesome. And then when you watch them, it's like, do they live up to, the trailer for one, or, the description? you know,
I
as
always
another
try to
reason.
avoid the trailer if possible, even though it does help like tell you what the movie's about. But I'd rather just look up a summary a lot of times because the trailer can spoil for horror movies. It could like give away jump scares. So like a lot of times with horror specifically, other movies I will, but horror I try to avoid at all costs if I can.
Well, you have to be careful too, because sometimes the trailer is misleading. It seems like it's going to be one way, and then it turns out to be something totally different that you weren't expecting. So
Right.
you have to, sometimes even movie posters are
Yeah,
misleading, you
that is
know?
true.
So yeah, I think your best bet is to go by the summary. And also it's great to have recommendations from, you know, fellow horror, you know, buffs, but I don't know.
So some of these movies like came off of like lists that I actually researched last Halloween. Like after Halloween was over, I like started to plan my next marathon already. I was like, yeah, let me write down some movie ideas. Others came from like, I took some from what Kat was going to watch and like put them on my list. So the list since last year, since I started planning, has gone through a lot of different iterations. But overall, kind of agreeing with you. It was enjoyable. It was fun. It was entertaining the whole marathon. But inevitably, I knew this would happen. It didn't, it didn't live up. I'm kind of putting last year's on a pedestal. I did have duds last year. So every year has duds. And I think you have to go in with that kind of mentality, knowing that it's going to possibly be there, that these little ones that you might not like as much will be there. That's okay. But yes, still lots of fun. I love the thematicness of it. That's like the thing that I love the most. It adds so much to my holiday celebration in general. And that's what I really treasure about it. So
yeah,
it was
I agree.
fun.
Yeah, it's always fun. It's just, I think our expectations are like way up there.
Yes.
You know, that everything is going to, you know, resonate in some way, or you're going to be scared and, you know, the whole entire time you're watching. And as we know, it doesn't always work that way. But also too, I mean, you have to take in consideration, you watch 65 movies. So out of those movies, the ones that were the best are going to be the ones that stand out. Like if you did a ratio of how many were great last year as opposed to your duds compared to, you know, the 31 that you watched, plus didn't you do a bonus one too?
I did, yes.
Yeah, so 32 movies that you watched. Your ratio might actually be that you had more that you liked, you know, as opposed to the ones you disliked. But
that's true. I should have done like a percentage, but I didn't think about doing that.
Right,
that's a good idea.
You know, so you got to consider that as well. So
that's very true. And also another consideration is we were just coming off of a really successful marathon with our summer slasher marathon. That was the marathon we did before our Halloween movie marathon. And so I think because we had so much fun with that one, I mean, we discovered so many gems, at least for me, during that marathon, where it was like, I mean, I knew this one was going to be a little shaky going after that great one. I was like, you know, anytime you're following something great, it's hard to top it sometimes. But I'm not bashing my marathon because, like I said, I did find some gems. Not only did I find some gems, I'm really impressed with my overall stats. And that will bring us to our statistical discussion. And I'm really excited about this because I told Kat, like, the numbers, once you start watching like a lot of movies, the numbers become really impressive and overwhelming and really fun to like look at and analyze. So let's dive into the numbers. All right. So I did, as Kat mentioned, I had originally scheduled 31 movies, but I ended up adding one movie. So I had a bonus movie to make it a total of 32 total movies. And I will say, so my original list that I kind of announced on my YouTube channel, I did a whole reveal of the 31 movies that I was planning to watch. I actually had to replace quite a few of the movies. In total, I replaced 5 of the movies on my original list. So originally I had Near Dark, Ghost Watch. Both of those were scheduled, but for certain reasons, I couldn't watch them. Unfortunately, I really wanted to. Those were not replaced because I didn't feel like watching them. It was because I literally could not find them. Another one that I had to replace, Cemetery of Terror, which I was supposed to watch with my dad. And so I kept saving it. And then it was Halloween day and we ended up watching something else together because he didn't have a DVD player and I only had it on DVD. So that was just because of necessity as well. Then I didn't feel like watching Black Box and The Pumpkin Carver. I kind of had some other movies that were calling out to me. And so I replaced those. So what I ended up adding and replacing those 5 with were Don't Breathe, which was a rewatch, Halloween H2O, Something Wicked This Way Comes, which was another rewatch, Night of the Demons, and Halloween 2018, which was also a rewatch that I watched in preparation of the new Halloween, Halloween Kills. I wanted to rewatch the 2018 one because Halloween Kills is a sequel. So again, those were the movies that replaced the original 5 that I took away. And I also added for my 30-second movie, Halloween Kills. And let me break down the decades for you as well. And then I'll toss it over to some of your stats and then we'll come back to some of mine too. All right, so some of the decades. So I had 4 movies from the 70s, which would be Driller Killer, Let's Scare Jessica to Death, The Brood, and the original Halloween. So Halloween 1978 version. Then I had 10 movies from the 80s, Mr. Boogedy, The Stuff, Something Wicked This Way Comes, Silver Bullet, The Monster Squad, Night of the Demons, A Chinese Ghost Story, Scanners, Ghoulies, and The Midnight Hour. That's a lot of movies in the 80s there.
Mm-hmm.
I will just say, just like last year, my marathon list was 80s heavy. This year, same thing, 80s heavy. I haven't even gone through the other decades, but it's a spoiler. I'm telling you, the 80s, that was the most I watched out of any decade was the 80s movies. All right, so moving onwards, 5 movies from the 90s. That would be Nightbreed, The People Under the Stairs, Halloweentown, The Resurrected, and Halloween H2O. Then 2 movies from the 2000s, that would be Session 9 and Pulse. Funnily enough, I believe they're both from 2001, so both from the same year, coincidentally. That wasn't on purpose. 7 movies from the 2010s, We Are Still Here, The Black Coat's Daughter, 1922, Creep, All Hallows Eve, Don't Breathe, and Halloween 2018. All right, and then we had finally 4 movies actually were released for me this year, so in 2021, and that would be Malignant, A Classic Horror Story, The New Candyman, and Halloween Kills. Like I said, the new Halloween. So those were my kind of stats for the decades. And then I'm going to tell you which rewatches and the hours in a second. But Kat, dive into how many movies you had and the replacements and then the decades. And then we'll come back to me.
Okay, well, for me, I picked 20 movies, which was a bump up from what I had originally done last year. Last year, I only did 13. I picked the lucky number 13 last year. But anyway, I decided to bump it up to 20. I figured I could do it. And out of those, I had 18 that were brand new watches. Some of them came off of your list, because I thought they sounded like some good titles. A couple of them I had been wanting to watch. And, but I had to end up replacing 2 of my movies, which was a big disappointment. The first one was Trick or Treat. I replaced it with the Halloween Tree. Trick or Treat, I just waited too long to get it. I was getting it on disc from Netflix. And by the time it came up in my queue to get it, it had a very long wait. So obviously everyone wanted to watch it close to Halloween. So lesson learned, but it will be on my list for a future marathon. And then I had to replace Near Dark with Dark Was the Night. And I was really bummed out about Near Dark because I had seen Near Dark, many, many years ago. I probably when it first came out. And there was 2 reasons why I was bummed out about it. One, it's by Catherine Bigelow, who is a female director. And she was one of the first female directors to actually win an Academy Award. And she won that for The Hurt Locker. So that was, one reason I wanted to see it because it was her earlier work. And then 2, the great late Bill Paxton is in it.
Yes,
and I mean, he
I love
is
him.
Fabulous. So I was really disappointed not to be able to watch it because of those 2 things. Now
that was going to be a joint movie for us. It's such a bummer.
Yes, I know, because I really do think we would have had a really awesome conversation about it.
I do too, and everyone says how good it is. So it's just why?
And I think it's one of those movies that's will have really seem wonderful now, even though it's from back in the day, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, but I was pleased with the 2 that replaced it, and I'll explain that when, we discuss them. But, those were the 2 that I replaced. Now, when it came to my decades, I had one movie from the 50s, believe it or not. It's called House on Haunted Hill. And I wanted to watch it. It's a Vincent Price movie. I wanted to watch it because I was in the play, or I'm currently still in the play, The House on Haunted Hill, which they based the play on this 1950s movie. It was actually 1959. I had not one movie from the 60s.
Oh, wow.
I had 3 movies from the 70s. Let's Scare Jessica to Death, which was 71, and The Brood and Driller Killer, which were both from 79. In the 80s, I only had 2, which was surprising.
Really?
I know, can you believe that? Because the 80s, that's my teen years, you know.
I'm really surprised.
I am. I was kind of surprised too. 2 of them, Silver Bullet from 85 and The Monster Squad from 87. The 90s, I had 4. I had Nightbreed from 1990, People Under the Stairs from 91, The Halloween Tree from 93, and Halloweentown from 98. Then I kind of broke up the 2000s. So from 2000 to 2009, I had 2, both from 2001, and that was Pulse and Session 9. When it comes to 2010 to 2019, that's 6. And I think that was my biggest group, honestly. I had All Hallows Eve from 2013, Creep from 2014, Dark Was the Night 2014, The Houses October Built from 2014, then 1922 from 17, and then Malevolent.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't pronounce.
I can't either, usually. It's okay. For once I can somehow.
Yes, thank you for helping me with that. That one was from 2018. And out of that group of movies, 2 of them were found footage movies, and that was Creep and The Houses October Built. I kind of like found footage movies.
Me too.
All from the back from, you know, when the first one that we really were introduced to with the Blair Witch Project.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
But anyway, my last group only had 2, and that was from 2020 to the present. Both of them are actually from 2021, Aftermath and A Classic Horror Story. And I just want to mention that Aftermath, and I'll talk a little more about it, was partly based on a true story, which was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Can't say much about it because it gives away too many surprises, but you know, it's just interesting to see what kind of movies you tend to pick and how many are like similar, you know, in ways. I mean, I know they're all scary and they're about horror, but it's interesting to me. You know, is it because there's a monster in it? Is it because there's a human in it that's doing really horrific things? You know, is it more fantasy? So I don't know. I find all of that really interesting to me. But can I also mention my longest and my shortest movies?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so my longest movie was Nightbreed at 120 minutes, and my shortest movie was The Halloween Tree at 69 minutes. I thought it was going to be, you know, House on Haunted Hill, because that was only 75 minutes. But then, I mean, Halloween Tree came in at 69. So that's pretty interesting to me. Well, I mean, I guess I shouldn't be too shocked, though, because it is animated.
Yeah, so. I mean, animated movies traditionally are a little bit shorter. But the funny thing is, so my shortest movie is even shorter than yours, which is like insane, because that means it's really, really short. So my longest movie watched was the same as yours, which was Nightbreed. The director's cut, we should specify, because the other version actually is shorter. So if you look up a version that's 102 minutes, and we're going to talk about Nightbreed today, but the 102-minute version is not the director's cut. The 120-minute, which is 2 hours long, that is the director's cut. That's the version you want to watch if you are going to watch Nightbreed. So yes, so that was my longest movie at 2 hours long. Shortest movie, it's not even a real movie. It's kind of a made for television, made for Disney or ABC movie. It's Mr. Boogedy, and that was 44 minutes. Super short.
That is. I mean, think about it. That's less than an hour.
I know, it helped me. I was like, yeah, I did that one early, and I did 2 in a day, and it really helped to do 2 that day because I felt like I was starting the marathon off on a good note, and it just helped because it didn't take too much time, because obviously most of these movies were an hour and a half. A lot of my movies were pretty consistent with length, and it was about an hour and a half, give or take a few minutes. Whereas this, I was like, hell yeah, put an hour and a half movie, and Mr. Boogedy, it was barely over 2 hours. Heck yeah. Where usually if you're watching 2, it's like 3-hour ordeal.
Right, right. It's
Yeah.
very hard. So what I did was I kind of planned the movies I had to, watch two, and one day I even attempted to watch three, because the time crunch. When
So
you're
that
in
was
a
your most you
play,
watched at once was
yeah, I
three?
think was three. But I have to say, one of them I think I was starting to fall asleep in, so I watched half of it, and then I ended up having to watch the other half the next day with two more movies. So basically it was like 2.5 of a movie on one day and 2.5 on another day, because it's very hard
It
with
is.
me being in this play with rehearsals. And then when the shows actually started, I was like, major watching. Had I known I was going to be in the play, I would have started watching a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
But, as far as like the beginning of fall, like when, we had decided that
I
would
mean,
be the good
usually I
time for us to
start on that
start.
day, but I didn't this year because we were traveling around the first day of fall. Like I watched one movie on the first day of fall, but then there was a big gap where I didn't utilize that time in late September like I usually would have. And same with you. You didn't really start as early either.
I didn't, because on the first day of fall, you and I had activities and we were
Yes.
vlogging those activities. And then we had also started an awesome book, Autumn Crow by Cameron Chaney. So I was reading more in the beginning
Me
of
too.
that time. I think I did watch one movie, perhaps. I didn't look to see when I had actually started, but I wanted to say I think I watched one movie before October 1st. But what about you, total watching time? How many hours did you spend watching movies?
It is really incredible when you sit there and look at it. Like you're like, oh, so it's kind of crazy, but it's actually not as much as I thought. So I thought, like, I don't know why I was thinking it'd be like a week long, like it totals up to like a week, but it doesn't. So 32 movies, it comes out to be 2 days, 2 hours and 3 minutes. So essentially 50 hours and 3 minutes of time, which is a lot. I'm not trying to downplay it, but like for some reason, as I was calculating it, I thought the number would be higher, but I'm still impressed. 10 out of 32 of my movies were rewatches. So essentially I watched 22 new movies total, and I'm pretty happy with that. I think that's a good number, but I will say compared to last year, I actually rewatched more movies. I rewatched
this year?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I tried to do a lot more new movies last year, and I still did a lot of new movies this year. It's just that because I had a smaller number, I really wanted to I was like, I don't want to miss out on rewatches just because I have a smaller number. So, and then when I started replacing stuff, I started to replace stuff with more rewatches. And that's just because I knew they were good and I needed last minute things. And I wanted something that I knew I would enjoy. And some of the stuff like the Halloween stuff, I wanted to add in there because I was rewatching because of Halloween Kills. And that was part of it too, to kind of prepare for the new Halloween. So I kind of wanted to get into the Halloween mindset is part of it too. So that's why there was more this year, but let's hear your numbers about the time spent.
Well, my numbers were 31 hours, 25 minutes, which if you think about that, for the month of October, I averaged about an hour of movie watching a day.
That's
if you
so
think about it
cool.
from that way.
I like thinking about it like that. That's interesting.
But that is a lot when you think about it compared to all the other things that I had to do. I mean, clearly other stuff, had to be put on the back burner, in order to do that. But also too, I was just really determined. You and I, had so much planned for Halloween, and I had no idea I was going to be in the play, even though I auditioned knowing I wasn't going to be in the play because I had a concert to go to in October.
The original weekend that it was going to open. For the original
weekend. So when Hurricane Ida hit, I still didn't have a clue. And when I got that text, I think it was October 3rd, that, they wanted me to join the cast, I was like, heck yeah. Because not only was I going to watch go and see the play, I was now going to be in it. But I was determined because we had so much fun stuff planned for our Halloween, season. I'm like, I am not letting anything spoil it. I will just figure out. And believe me, when you are determined to do something, you can efficiently figure out ways to do it. I mean, same with the reading. Now, I mean, obviously when we discussed this in our reading chat, I just ended up having to double dip a little bit with that, which made it also helpful for me to be able to watch, my movies. But I was just determined. I was going to do it, and I did. And I'm pretty impressed with myself.
I'm impressed with you too, because you deserve the pat on the back, because it's a lot of stuff in 1 month. 1 month and a few days, because we should say that, like Kat mentioned a little bit, we start officially the movie marathon on September 22nd, the first day of fall. And I did watch one movie that day, as I said, but I kind of, the week that followed before October hit, I didn't really utilize it like I could have, but still accomplished and surpassed what I wanted to do, which I'm by one movie, but still I'm very happy, because I was worried.
I think you should, because you weren't in a play, but you traveled a lot.
I did.
And then you also have to consider that we also had other Halloween related activities to do. You and I went shopping. You and I, also did a video chat together live and watched a movie together. That was fun. We got to watch.
We didn't do that last year. That was something
we did not. And we were going to watch another movie together, but with the play, I was unable to do that. But that's fine. It's just considering we baked, we did all kinds of things.
Oh, which we're going to talk about. We're going to have a big overall chat, like Kat is mentioning right now. We're going to have this big chat where we talk about the other things, because the movie marathon, it does sound epic when we say the hours we spent doing it, but it was actually like just a little part of the overall celebration that we did for October. Like Kat mentioned, baking. I know Kat always does like thematic cocktails. I didn't get to do one this year. I said I wanted to do one because I rewatched our chat from last year. I said, I want to do a cocktail next year, and I didn't do it. But next year we'll talk about it in the
and that's another thing. We were all trying to think about things that we wanted to do, but it just goes to show, when you do have a plan, you can stick to the plan. You may have to be flexible and change your plan a little bit here and there based on, things that come up. We were also affected a little bit by Hurricane Ida. Affected a lot, but we, didn't think we were even going to be able to get together to go shop. And we ended up doing that, because we were supposed to go shop in September. We ended up having to move it to October. But overall, I'm ecstatic about what we did. And I think it's because we always plan.
Yes.
And when you plan, it makes it a little bit easier. And you and I kind of hold each other accountable. And because we talk about what we're going to do, either in our blogs or on your YouTube channel, I feel like I need to, people who are reading or watching are holding us accountable also, because we want to share that we did it. So anyway, but before we move on, to actually discussing our movies, our disappointments, surprises, and all that, let's talk about which movies were kid friendly or what we considered more campy or anything like that. So start with yours.
Okay, so I had 3 movies, maybe even I'd say 3.5 movies that were kid friendly. I'm going to let you explain one of our ones in common. You thought it was kid friendly, but I just put it into horror. But 3 kid friendly movies. In terms of campy movies, I had a lot, of course, because it's me. I had 7 movies that you might consider campy or darker comedy. And then I had the rest were basically just horror movies. And that would be 23 other movies that were in the horror general genre category. How about you, Kat? How does it break down? I know you've got the titles too.
Right. Well, for kid friendly, I had 3. I had the Halloween Tree, Halloweentown, and the Monster Squad. But I need to just make a note. The Monster Squad does have some language in it. So I would say it is more geared towards a teenage audience, kind of on the same lines as the Goonies. As far as my campy or black comedy, dark comedy, I would say I have 3 of them. The House on Haunted Hill, People Under the Stairs, and again, Monster Squad. Also, I didn't mention what my rewatches were, but 2 of them I had were Silver Bullet and then Nightbreed. But I have to make a little comment about the Nightbreed. It sort of was a rewatch, because when I originally watched it, it was the not the director's cut. This time I watched the director's cut. It had been so long, I can't really tell you what the differences were with it. I would have had to watch both of them to do a compare and contrast, and I didn't have time to do that. But Kelsi, you're the reason why I did the director's cut, because you had told me how significant it was.
And Clive Barker says that essentially, if you don't watch the director's cut, it's a completely different film, and it's not really the film he intended to be seen. It's
That's
not really
agreed.
his vision. It was cut up, and we'll talk more about Nightbreed as we go on today. But
Right.
but
And then
yeah.
the only talking about Nightbreed, out of all of my movies, I would have to say that one falls under like fantasy horror, genre. And 14 of them would be what I would consider true horror.
Right.
But so that's my stats on those.
So by the way, so you had put Monster Squad kind of in kid friendly. I did not, but I put it in campy because it is a little campy.
It is campy, so that's why I put it in both.
It would count for both, but I was just trying to like put it like, make it stick in one category. And I agree with you about the fantasy horror for Nightbreed, but I just lumped it in with horror. But I do totally agree. I actually think it's even more fantasy than horror if you were doing percentages, let's say. And I didn't read my rewatches out so quickly, just to give you guys some, I guess, context when we were talking about the movies, which ones I already am very familiar with. Something Wicked This Way Comes, The Monster Squad, Session 9, Scanners, Don't Breathe, Nightbreed, The People Under the Stairs, Halloweentown, and Halloween, the original, and then Halloween 2018. Those were my 10 rewatches. Everything else, like I said, was new. And yeah, overall, lots of fun. But like you were talking about how everything that you accomplished made you really feel ecstatic. Well, let's keep up with that ecstatic vibe and talk about our surprises, the great stuff. Yes, let's talk about that because I had some good surprises. If you want, I'll go first.
Sure.
All right. So for my surprises, I really liked my rewatches of The Monster Squad and Something Wicked This Way Comes. Something Wicked This Way Comes totally blew me away after seeing it again. And it wasn't originally on my list. I'm so glad I added it. I was persuaded to add it because I actually read Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury in September, at the end of September, as part of like kind of like my ramping up for Halloween time, because it's set in fall and it has a super fall vibe. And so because of that, I wanted to, after I just read it, I was like, kind of want to rewatch the movie. You have to buy the DVD. It's not really streaming anywhere. Amazing. One of the best adaptations ever. I don't know. I really was blown away. Like I said, I saw it before, but I liked it even more after having read the book. And it's not always the case. And we talked about Cabal versus Nightbreed in our readathon chat that I just released. I'll link that down in the description, guys. But we talked about how Cabal almost made Nightbreed, like after you saw Nightbreed, you were like, I don't know. Like I just read Cabal and it was better. And so now Nightbreed, I'm all confused about how I feel about it. But the opposite was Something Wicked This Way Comes. In The Monster Squad, it had also been a long time. And I watched it with my parents and they were falling in and out of sleep, but that's not because it was boring. They're just like not good movie watchers. I always they're terrible at watching movies. They'll talk during the whole thing. I watched Halloween H2O with them and I recorded them secretly. And like my mom's like, oh, Jesus, at some parts, like she's like talking the whole time. And I don't know. I was like, what is with you guys? And they'll walk out the room for parts of the movie. I'm like, you want me to rewind? They're like, nah. I'm like, what is wrong with you? They're just like, not to be mean, I love them very much, but they're annoying movie watchers. Like you have to think about if you really want to watch a movie with them or not. In a nice way, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, I'm not bashing them, but it's the truth. So that's a little absurd, but I love the rewatches and I even love the Monster Squad watch, even though my parents were talking and distracting me and stuff like that. It was still fun, but I didn't remember it very well. So like, that's why it was one of my surprises, because it like was like seeing it again for the first time kind of. Then my new watches that were surprises, We Are Still Here, blew me away. Awesome. The Brood and Let's Scare Jessica to Death, which Stephen King shouted out. Those are two of my surprises. I really love those films. And I think I liked them a little bit more than you, but we'll get there when we get there, because those are two movies we're going to dive into in our part 2 chat. We're not talking about them today, but yeah, because we had those in common. We are going to do a little bit of a deeper dive, but it's next time in the next wrap-up video. All right, so also Silver Bullet was a surprise because I laughed so much and I didn't know I would love it. And it was just a great time watching it with you in person. I think that added to it for me and it kind of made the experience even better overall. And then finally, I do want to kind of dive into this discussion since I'm going to shout it out here, and then we'll go into your surprises afterwards. But my final surprise, and it was a big surprise because I just thought I would think it was okay, but All Hallows Eve, it blew me away. It literally blew me away because the reason we have it on our list is we just watched Terrifier for our slasher chat. And we had mixed feelings about it, but it was effectively very disturbing. And that's what we ended up talking about. We had a whole chat about the movie, by the way. I'll link that down below too, because we were like, oh, Art the Clown, oh, and we got into like philosophical not debates, but discussions about the movie. Like, what is a slasher? We talked about because of that movie. It brought up so many things. We also talked about what is the line between torture porn and like just horror.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about all these things because of Terrifier. So it brought up a lot of stuff for us. So All Hallows Eve, you know, I like Terrifier, but it was more that it was disturbing. All Hallows Eve, I loved. I thought it was thematic. I thought it was creepy. I just thought the story was overall better as compared to Terrifier. Mm-hmm. So it blew me away at how much I liked it, especially compared to Terrifier, and just in general, how effective it was and how perfect for Halloweentown it was, and how it had like this nod to the 90s kind of, mm-hmm. because they were watching a VHS tape on a VCR. So I love anything with VHSs that kind of, you know, right off the bat kind of makes me happy just that there was VHS involved. But yeah, awesome stuff. Kat, I know you've got a lot to say about All Hallows Eve. What are your thoughts on it?
Oh, I have lots of thoughts on it. First of all, just to let you know, Art the Clown and we talked about this when we did our Terrifier chat, Art the Clown in All Hallows Eve is actually played by a different actor. Mm-hmm. It's Mike Gianelli. He was, the whole way this all came about too, it's an anthology for anyone who doesn't know. It's an anthology. He plays Art the Clown in The Ninth Circle and a short Terrifier film that was in 2011. And Mike Gianelli is the one that were in those, he was in the short films as well as in this compilation. I liked also too that we see Kate McGuire. She played Sarah in this film, but she was also a reporter in the actual Terrifier film from 2016. And then, believe it or not, I don't know if you noticed this because you did watch The Walking Dead for a while. So mm-hmm. I'm not sure if this character came up, but Christine Evangelista, uh-huh. she played the character of Scarecrow in All Hallows Eve, but she plays Sherry on The Walking Dead, who is Dwight's wife. And then she's also in the crossover. She crossed over to Fear the Walking Dead. Oh. And she's still Dwight's wife.
I did not make that connection at all.
I did not until I was doing some research and I'm like, wow. So this is like her earliest stuff, you know?
Right.
Mike Gianelli ended up retiring from acting after doing this. I don't know if like Art the Clown just pushed him over the edge. I'm not sure about
too
that.
Hardcore.
But he did. He does not, you know, everything seems to be what he's done. I think he did one other little thing, but mostly everything was being Art the Clown that I could find. Mm-hmm. David Howard Thornton took over as Art the Clown and is actually the actor who plays Art in Terrifier. He's also going to reprise that role in Terrifier 2, which is scheduled to come out in 2022. It was supposed to come out already, but COVID pushed everything behind. I have to say, compared, I don't know if you looked at your ratings on this, but compared to Terrifier, 77% of Google users liked All Hallows Eve, whereas 79% like Terrifier. So that's not really that bad considering this was the first introduction to Art the Clown. IMDb was 5.1 out of 10, mm-hmm. whereas Terrifier was 5.7.
Oh, I like the 10. Comparison.
Yeah, which is not that bad. Now, where it gets a big difference is that Rotten Tomatoes, only 32% were in favor of All Hallows Eve.
It's the audience score, though, that's the 32%. So it's not the critics score. The 32%, I looked it over, because there is a difference between critics. There really is no critics consensus on All Hallows Eve.
Exactly.
But 250 people, like I guess the average is about 32% over 250 audience people. So just regular people like you and me. Just wanted to say that. So what was for Terrifier?
60%.
Oh, wow.
So it's just interesting that, you know, they're pretty neck and neck with numbers with Google users and IMDb. But then when you look at Rotten Tomatoes, more people, you know, like Terrifier better. But I think what it is, he got a good reception from All Hallows Eve. Damon Leone, who's the director of this film, that's what prompted, I guess, him making a feature film. And then he got great reception from that. So that's why we're having a sequel. Now, and All Hallows Eve obviously was released in 2013, and I believe it was straight to DVD.
Right.
I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure it was. And he's just so super creepy. And I have to say, I think he's, I don't know, I didn't feel he was as creepy in the first film. He was more human clown
Right.
in the first little short film.
Like
than
the train
he was,
station part.
Yes, than he was like in the last one. And okay, and like just to give you guys some, context, there are 3 short films embedded into a bigger film.
Right.
Because basically it's a babysitter watching 2 children on Halloween night.
They find a VHS tape in one of the kids' like candy bags, and essentially they decide to watch it. The kids are convincing her to watch it, and for some reason she's like, "Yeah, it's okay, I guess." Like I would have never let the kids watch it because it could have been
horrible. It could have been porn.
Exactly. That's exactly what I thought. I was like, if I was the babysitter, the first thing I would think is this is porn in my freaking the kids I'm babysitting's bag. No way we're watching it together. I would have watched it first. And like she says, "Oh, I'm gonna watch it and then let you know if you could watch it." But they're like peeking in the corner. They can see that it's like what it is. They can see the screen.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I would be a little more careful if I was her. But essentially, she puts in the tape, and there's 3 stories on the tape, and well, there's like 2 stories on the tape, and then more. No, it's 3.
No, it's 3.
Yeah, it's 3, and then more happens after they watch the tape. But yeah, lots of stuff develop. But the tape is disturbing. All these different stories, and Art the Clown makes an appearance in all the stories. He kind of ties everything together.
Yeah, somehow he's in the story, and then I can't say anything beyond that because you don't want to give away, the. I guess the twist or the ending, which I thought was fabulous. I found in some ways this was scarier and a little more suspenseful.
Yes.
Than Terrifier. I mean, Art is just such a grotesque villain, I guess I could say. He's just, I don't know, you use the word unsettling, and I have to agree with that. And I think it's because he's a mime. He's a demonic clown killer that's mime-like. And mimes are creepy just in general. But it's the way he does things is just very disturbing across the board. But I found that it was kind of, I don't know, it was scarier and a little more suspenseful. And I don't know if it's because the overall movie, that's happening, the story that's happening around the short, these videos, that they're watching on this VHS. I don't know if that lends to it. I will say the treatment of women is similar to Terrifier.
Yes. But there's guy stuff too. I mean, there's some brutality with guys.
There is guy stuff. Now, and I also do think there is a nod to other horror movies. I do think the whole babysitter with the children on Halloween watching the movie is like a nod to Halloween.
Yes.
Yes. You've got other genres that are also touched upon with the devil worshiping. You've got possession. There's a little sci-fi in there. Yeah. And then you've also have the slasher, aspect of it with the story. It worked for me that the 3 stories are part of the bigger picture with Sarah and the 2 children, which are Timmy and Tia. It's a movie within a movie. And I like that. I don't know if I should say that there's a movie, if I should spoil this by saying that I like the concept of a movie and reality collision. That's all I'm going to say, to it. I kind of felt like All Hallows Eve is like an appetizer to Art the Clown. Terrifier is the main course. And Terrifier 2, I'm expecting to be the dessert in 2022. It's going to be, I think, what's going to be the sweet spot for Art the Clown. I think Art the Clown is being developed along the way to just be, iconic as far as the horror genre. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
I think Art is such an effective villain. He's so, I mean, you said that I said unsettling, but also off-putting. Like he is so gross. Like you don't want to have anything to do with him.
Right.
And the funny thing is, so there are some parts in All Hallows Eve that they clearly took and put into Terrifier.
Yes.
Like stuff that happens in a bathroom at a gas station. They talk about that happening at a restaurant in Terrifier, which is really gross, by the way. It has to do with like bathroom
Disgusting.
stuff and so sick. But I will say, I don't know why. And it has nothing to do with the actor. Because actually, I do think the way the Terrifier Art the Clown looks is a little creepier because his cheekbones look more hollow to me. And that's the part that's the most disturbing when you look at his face. When you look at his face, I feel like you see the cheekbones like really like caved in. And that's what's like so off-putting, like the really prominent nose. It's kind of pointy like a witch in a way, even. Just his facial features.
Well, if you notice in the first one, that's why I said he looks more like a human clown in the first short film.
Yes.
Because he does not have gross teeth in that one.
And
he
his
looks
cheeks
like
are
he
fuller.
is, because they're in like isn't it a train station? It's either, it's a train station.
Yes.
He looks like he would be taking the train because he's just left a party, of some kind. I don't know what, it definitely wouldn't be a kid's party because I don't know any kid that would want that kind of a clown being there.
Oh, no.
But he doesn't have gross teeth. Whereas in the second and third short film, and even in, the whole overall, and even when you see him in Terrifier, his teeth are rotting. They're gross. He's got these like, it just adds more to him being more demonic and gross, and I don't know, but there is a difference with that. And that's why I think when you first see him, you're like, okay, this is so totally different, than
it's like they shot the first clip in the train station, and we're talking about All Hallows Eve. Like, I don't want people to get confused, because I am kind of going between Terrifier and All Hallows Eve, but just talking about All Hallows Eve, there's 3 separate stories, as we mentioned, and then like a larger overall story. So the first separate story on the VHS that they watch is a train station story, and it devolves from there. But like Art's in there, and his face is just so round, and it's almost like they didn't have the character fully designed when they shot that part of the movie, because later on then he starts to look like the Terrifier version that we know of now as Art the Clown. So once we got over that first story, which Art's not in that much, I feel like after that the differences between the 2 clowns aren't that prominent to me. It just was prominent in the very first part because his design looked different from the whole rest of the movie. Not only from Terrifier, but the whole rest of the All Hallows Eve as well. After you get past that, Art looks very similar to the Art we know in Terrifier. So to me, it didn't bother me in terms of, I can't really compare and say I liked it better or worse. I like the story better of All Hallows Eve. I like how it was anthology. I like how it tied in to a larger thing. I like the babysitter, the character of the babysitter. The kids were annoying. The girl wasn't so bad.
No,
the little boy.
I hated the little boy.
I thought when we were watching the beginning that we were going to see something crazy with the little boy. Like he was going to become like Art the Clown, like look up to him or something, because he was so like into the VHS they were watching. He was so into the disturbing parts of the tape. So
he didn't seem like he was really bothered by what happened in the first one. And I was like appalled. I'm an adult and I'm appalled.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's why I was like, something's wrong with this kid. But like things played out differently than I thought. I just liked the premise. I like the VHS elements. I know a lot of people feel the opposite way, and we're going to get to somebody who seems to feel the opposite way in a second, because we actually have a great clip from our friend Ray, who kindly watched All Hallows Eve. He had only watched Terrifier, and he's a part of our Terrifier chat as well, guys. He gave us his thoughts on the movie, but he watched All Hallows Eve for us and recorded his thoughts on it for us, and we're going to play it in a second. But I do want to say that I remember Nathan, my friend Nathan, his full name is Nathaniel Toll, the author of Pumpkin Cinema. He watched our Terrifier chat and said that he actually doesn't like Terrifier. He thought All Hallows Eve was better. So although the consensus might be most people like Terrifier more, Nathan, and personally I agree with Nathan, like All Hallows Eve better. I just thought it was like a better a more enjoyable film and a better story. And that's my reasons why. Kat, if you had to pick one or the other before we toss to Ray, what do you say?
I actually would pick All Hallows Eve. I just think it's the stories, I mean, the middle story is kind of crazy and doesn't really kind of fit in with, because I guess it's got that science fiction element. But still it was like suspenseful to me. I liked that it was just a little more suspenseful. It wasn't just like, like a hack job, or whatever the case may be. He is Terrifier is worth watching, but if I had to choose between the two, I would say All Hallows Eve first, and then Terrifier. And I really am interested to see Terrifier 2, which I can't believe I'm saying that, because after watching Terrifier, I was like, I don't want to have anything to do with Art the Clown ever again. But before we move on, from, wrapping up, All Hallows Eve, I just wanted to give you some fun facts.
Go ahead.
That I found on Villains Wiki. You and I feel this way, and we talked about this. Many feel Art the Clown is misogynistic, okay, because of his sadistic treatment of female victims. And we see that, I think, a lot more in Terrifier, but I do still think you see it in All Hallows Eve, probably with the first one and the last one on the VHS tape. And we also thought maybe he had mommy issues because of what happens in Terrifier. But believe it or not, the director and the actor, David Howard Thornton, who's the current Art the Clown, they both deny those theories.
Oh,
which I found very interesting. Also, Art is supernatural. And we learned this in Terrifier, but when David Leone was interviewed, he stated in an interview that Art is totally unaware that he's supernatural until he comes back from the dead.
Oh.
So it wasn't until he comes back from the dead after shooting himself in the head that he becomes aware that he is a supernatural being, which is really, really freaky. And that makes sense because we don't see any supernatural elements in All Hallows Eve. So that's kind of interesting to me.
There's nothing supernatural, but there is something strange, though, in All Hallows Eve that's like unexplainable, though.
Well, yes, but then I alluded to that with the whole.
Yes, I don't want to give it away because it's one of the coolest parts of the movie.
Yes, it is really cool. However, so when you think about that, that's why I kind of came up with the whole, All Hallows Eve is an appetizer, it terrifies the main course, and now we're going to have dessert with Terrifier 2. Where is he going to go with this? That's, where is it going to? How's it going to evolve anymore?
I just love that now you're like, I'm looking forward to seeing Terrifier 2 after I experienced your texts after watching Terrifier, which was your first experience with Art the Clown. You were like, I can't take this. I don't know if I like it. I hate it. Oh my God, wait till you see it. Like all this stuff.
I didn't know if I was going to actually be able to finish watching it after that one scene. I'm like, this is crossing the line with torture porn. I don't think I can do it.
But then, as we analyzed it more and more, you were seeing the merits of it in terms of like a effective horror movie and a really like strikingly scary horror movie. But all those things still are true after we've watched Terrifier. But now that we watched All Hallows Eve, I'm just like, if I were to rewatch one over and over again, I would honestly pick All Hallows Eve because it is more of a balanced movie. It's not like, it doesn't even cross the line to me into torture porn. It's just like a fun time. I feel like it's a more casual watch, where Terrifier, it left me, I don't know, in a way it is more disturbing because it's so focused on the women he's obsessed with at the time. But in terms of just a thematic movie and more fun to rewatch, definitely All Hallows Eve for sure. But both have merits, both are good to watch, both are worth watching for sure. But I love those facts about the supernatural, that he doesn't really realize that he's even capable of anything like that. Which, even if you take into account the end of All Hallows Eve, I still feel like you could say that because maybe he doesn't even realize what he's doing. He's just being, but he doesn't realize that he can defy death.
Right, exactly.
So so I still think your theory holds and the interview holds even after seeing All Hallows Eve. That makes sense to me. But overall, I'm really happy we watched it because I had no idea it would be one of my biggest surprises. If you would have asked me before the marathon, are you gonna how are you gonna feel about All Hallows Eve? I'm sure I was gonna say I'll be disturbed and we'll have a good discussion about it. I didn't think I'd really enjoy it. and like
Right.
watch it again, like if I had the opportunity. I never thought I would feel that way. I would have never guessed that in a million years. So that's so interesting. But do you have any more tidbits, or was that all
No,
of
that
them?
was it. That was it.
All right, so we've given our analysis. Kat had some great notes and like little like fun facts. But now let's go to someone else's opinion, because what I love is to include others' opinions. I don't like it to be just us. I feel like Ray has a little bit of a different opinion about All Hallows Eve as compared to Terrifier than we do, and that's going to be fascinating to hear. So guys, without further ado, thank you so much, Ray, for recording these thoughts, and here is what he has to say.
If you happen to notice my beard and everything being pink, or like pink reddish spots on me, I was at a Gwar concert last night, and I don't know if you know anything about Gwar, but their shows are very interactive, and you leave looking like you came from a bloodbath. So just disregard. So basically, with All Hallows Eve, I wasn't that impressed with it overall. The stories were, I found, very derivative of other stuff that I've seen or has come before it. The beginning story, the first one, that was kind of like Rosemary's Baby combined with a little bit of Nightbreed and like that, and it was okay, but it wasn't that great. The only really cool thing I thought about it was the demon design was pretty cool. The story about the woman who was being stalked that was at the gas station, that one, again, that's, basically it's a Friday the 13th type thing, again, something I've seen, I don't know how many times. I'm trying to figure out, I know there's something weird and, I guess, supernatural about art, according to, like, the Terrifier, because he comes back to life at the end, but, she walks in, sees him, killing the dude or sawing his head off, and then, she turns around, takes off, gets in the car, is riding, and then ahead of her down the road, there's Art hitchhiking. It's like, so now we're doing a Jason Voorhees thing. You can run at full speed through the woods, but he's just going to pop up right behind the car when you get there anyway, as he's, slowly, walking in that general direction, half the time with a limp or something. So that was just silly. And I don't know how I feel about when she hid in that barn or whatever, and he freaking popped out from the ground. I don't know. I mean, part of me is like, okay, that's different. And the other part of me is like, okay, that's different, but really stupid. And then the alien story, that to me was just bad. I don't get it. That was just bad. And then the last one, that's basically derivative of The Ring. And I've seen, movies, Oculus was similar, the woman, where the girl would see into the mirror and, stuff would happen. And I think there's like a Twilight Zone or something episode where it was every time when somebody would look into like a mirror or reflection, the whatever was after would be closer and closer and closer until it got her, so it's basically the same story as that. So it wasn't that memorable. I mean, it was worth a watch to check out, to see kind of Damien Leone's first movie, and it was, interesting as a fan of Art the Clown to see the origins of them. But overall, I wouldn't watch it again. I don't know if I'd even recommend it. I found in this one, for some reason, I got this real misogynistic feeling about it, especially the one where he kidnaps the woman from the where he came out from under the ground, and she wakes up and she's been delimbed, and all these all the words carved in her, slut and whore and all that, and Art just sitting there like laughing at her, and I was like, I don't know, that's just really misogynistic, and I don't get it. In Terrifier, yes, he killed a lot of women, and in horrible ways, but David Howard Thornton, in my opinion, when he was doing Art the Clown, he brought this kind of whimsy almost to it. He was making himself, he was irritating himself, even though what he was doing was horrid, and what we saw him doing was horrid. There was that air of playfulness, almost a twisted playfulness and whimsy that he brought. That whoever the first guy was, it just seemed like just cruel to be cruel, to more of a torture porn-esque thing, and I wasn't really big into that. I did like, there were callbacks, well, I guess not callbacks, but foreshadowing, a lot of stuff that, Art did or had, like his chain with the weapons on it, and the horde and stuff like that Damien Leone carried over into Terrifier. So I really do like those little kernels that he did pull and flesh out or use to put into Terrifier. That was really cool, but overall, yeah, not that impressed.
Thank you so much, Ray. We really appreciate you recording your thoughts for us. It means a lot. I know you took the time to do that for us, and we were having some technical issues, so you did it more than once. We appreciate you. So fascinating to hear his thoughts. But now we've talked about my surprises, which led us into a whole nother discussion. Now let's talk about your surprises out of your movie marathon.
Okay, and these probably will be surprising to you.
Oh gosh.
My surprises were The Houses, October Built, Creep, both the found footage movies. I like both of those. Aftermath, and I'll go into details when we discuss that one, if we talk about that one later on. A Classic Horror Story, and The Halloween Tree. So those were all surprises to me. I enjoyed all of them. Just certain elements of them. I wasn't expecting, I guess, much from a couple of them, because either they were a Netflix original, and sometimes it's not a sure thing, with those movies. But my biggest surprise of all is Halloweentown. That's my biggest one, and that one was the one that you and I were supposed to watch together.
Yeah, that would have been fun.
It would have been, but it is my biggest surprise out of all the movies I watched. Give us a synopsis of what it's about, and then I'm going to tell you some things I liked about it.
Okay, perfect. All right, so of course, Halloweentown, it's from 1998, and it stars the wonderful Debbie Reynolds. She's just marvelous in this movie. So the premise is, when a young girl living with her secret witch mother learns she too is a witch, she must help her witch grandmother save Halloweentown from evil forces. And let me just say, before you dive into your reasons why you liked it so much and our discussion on it, I am so happy that you liked it, because when you recommend a movie, which I did recommend one that you didn't like, but we'll get there when we get there, but which is next chat, not this chat. But when you recommend a movie, you're like, I don't know if the person's going to really like it. I liked this movie because in 1998, I was 9 years old. So who knows, adult you, like, I know you love picture books, and I know you love younger, sweeter things. It doesn't matter really what age that the thing is made for. You tend to like things if they're good. So I kind of knew that you might like it. I just didn't know for sure, because like I said, I had the bias of seeing it when I was 9 years old. So there was always that chance that you could have been like, yeah, it was okay, it was corny, whatever. But I'm so happy you were surprised by it. Kat, take away. What are your thoughts?
Well, I loved it. Okay, first of all, like you said, Debbie Reynolds is in it. She plays Aggie Cromwell, the grandmother. And Debbie Reynolds is fabulous. I mean, she is of Singing in the Rain fame, and also Carrie Fisher's mother. So I was just excited to see her in something a little more current. Also, too, I was surprised about Judith Hoag being in it. She plays Gwen Piper, who is the mother, who is secretly a witch, and we find that out later on. But if you are from the 90s and you are a fan of the Teenage Ninja Turtles, you will realize this is April O'Neil.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was wonderful because I have seen that movie probably a gajillion times because that was one of my son Barry's favorite movies was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I thought this movie was delightful, magical, heartwarming. It was a sweet family story. I don't know how I never watched it with my children. I can't even imagine because Barry's the same age that you are.
Mhm.
So why wasn't he watching this movie?
Maybe he didn't watch Disney Channel because Disney Channel isn't like it's not like it was released in the theaters. It was specifically on Disney Channel.
Yes.
Some kids were more into Nickelodeon. I was kind of into both. Honestly, like everyone on my channel knows me for loving Nickelodeon and 90s Nickelodeon specifically. But honestly, to be fair, I was pretty obsessed with Disney all throughout the 90s, Disney Channel especially. And then also in the early 2000s, Disney Channel as well. Even more in the early 2000s, I was into Disney Channel more than...
And that's probably it because he was a big Nickelodeon kid.
Exactly.
And he liked Cartoon Network, that kind of stuff.
Yes. And I wasn't into Cartoon Network too much.
And this was actually the first Disney Channel original movie. I don't know if you knew that. It is the very first original movie.
I thought it was under wraps.
Research. Oh no. Well, according to the information,
you're probably right.
I
believe you. That's awesome.
I thought the film was wonderful. It was well cast. Characters, even Calabar, which was played by Robin Thomas, they're all likable. Even though he was like the villain, he was a likable villain. And it was very well received by audiences. All four movies, there are four of them together. So, I mean, obviously they went on to create a franchise with it. I just think there's a good message in Halloweentown. It's about understanding differences, fighting prejudice, promoting acceptance. You've got the mortal versus monsters, which is kind of similar to the conflict that we see in Nightbreed, which I found was pretty interesting. This was a little more family friendly than Nightbreed.
Oh yeah.
But I love the fantasy element of Halloweentown itself, with the monsters, the actual town itself, their celebrations, its shops, just all the magic that surrounds it. It reminds me of Harry Potter. It reminds me of like the Spiderwick Chronicles, Alice in Wonderland. It's like all that, just the magical, witches who are friendly, not necessarily doing, evil things, but more, for the good. It just was a really good feel-good movie. And I was honestly kind of surprised. I mean, it did get good ratings, and I guess that's because of, being a more of a family film, but I was really still kind of surprised by the ratings. I mean, 82% of Google users, 6.7 out of 10 on IMDb, and 80% for Rotten Tomatoes. I just thought it would have been a little bit higher, considering how well put together it was, that it was a made for television movie, it's the type of movie that I would want to revisit. Like that's one thing about eventually I'm going to become a grandmother. This would be a film that I would want to watch with my grandchildren, like during the fall or the Halloween season. But I could see myself putting this movie on, while I was doing something on Halloween and having it like in the background.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It's just, I was really, really excited about it. I don't know how the other movies compare to it, as far as the sequels that followed it. I don't know if they're just as good, or you still have that, because you like the characters so much, that it's just like revisiting an old friend kind of thing. Did you watch the other sequels to this one? I
may have watched Halloweentown too, but I have such a fondness for the first one that I really don't really venture into the other ones. I know I might have seen the second one at least once, but otherwise I was like, the first one's good enough for me. There's some people who love all of them,
right?
But I just have such a fondness for the first one, and they replayed the first one for many years. So the sequel might have been released when I was still into Disney Channel, but I'm sure like the other ones after that, they were probably released when I was out of Disney Channel, because there came a point like kind of like during High School Musical range that I didn't watch Disney Channel anymore.
Oh, okay.
I stopped at a certain point because I just didn't like the type of original movies. But this one was the most prominent Halloweentown when I was still watching. And so that's why I think I like it the most. But I wouldn't be opposed to seeing the others, but I just love this one. It's so perfectly done. Like you said, it gives you those good feels. It gives you just also a thematic feel as well. It's perfect for how, like, literally you could watch it on Halloween every year and it would work, and it like it sets the tone for the day because it's so appropriate for
and I just thought it was very well cast. Like I liked who they chose for the characters. Everybody just seemed like the chemistry with everyone was really great. I loved, how the monsters looked, the fact that they are actually living in a town where they just can be themselves, it just,
I love how they're nice. They're not mean monsters.
Yes, they're not mean monsters. I love how they have a specific bus. There was so many things about it that I just kind of was like, oh, that's kind of like, in Harry Potter when they have that magical bus, that takes them everywhere, that has a little shrunken head in it, but it's just kind of neat, and I liked how they did have a dilemma. They had a conflict, and they were able to resolve it. It was a big surprise. I really did not think it was going to be, I didn't want to say, I didn't think it was going to be corny, but I was just like, some kids' movies, you watch it as an adult with your children because you're taking your children to see it. Mm-hmm. This is something I really do think as an adult, you can appreciate it and you can enjoy it, from an adult standpoint. So yeah, this was definitely an awesome recommendation.
Yay!
And, if I had to say anything that I was disappointed about it was the fact that you and I did not get to watch it together. Because I do think you and I would have had a great time watching it together.
We really would have, and we would have probably like eaten some snacks and made some tea, like pumpkin themed tea. So it would have been super appropriate, but I'm so happy that you got to be in the play. So totally understandable. Mm-hmm. And, maybe one year in the future, we could rewatch it together or watch another like movie that's in a similar vein. That'll be a surprise for you in a future year that you haven't seen. Maybe. Yes. Because there is another Disney Channel original movie, Under Wraps, that is also Halloween themed. Well, it's kind of like scary themed. It's not on Halloween, but I love that one too. Not as feel good as this one, but still, I think really fun and good and well cast as well. Lots of chemistry with the cast, but this one's just so great. And my only criticism of the story would be the mom has some weak reasons for keeping like, that her daughters are witches from them, because I do think they should have been allowed to choose for themselves and to at least know the possibility that they did have powers. And she was literally about to let Marnie lose her powers without ever telling her the possibility.
I know, which would have been so sad because she's so excited about it. And honestly, it's because of her, deciding I'm going to be a little rebellious, and try to figure this out, that they end up having a great result at the end.
Yes.
And what was wonderful too for me, I've been a subscriber of Disney Plus, which is for, I don't know, the last couple of years or whatever. This was the first movie that I watched on Disney Plus. Can you believe that? I know. Is that not insane? I finally utilized it, and I'm like so amazed. I know they have lots of great stuff on there, but I was so amazed by everything on it. But I'm glad that was another thing. It got me to watch it because it was available on Disney Plus. And so I'm like, you know what? I need to be, I'm paying for my subscription now. At first I wasn't, when we first got it, it was free because we were Verizon subscribers. But, now we've gotten into where we end up now paying for it. I'm like, I need to utilize this. They have a lot of great stuff on there.
If you like Marvel, they've got tons of Marvel stuff. They got tons of Star Wars stuff, but even more, they've got some old school Disney stuff, and they've got more Disney Channel original movies on there too. Like I said, the Under Wraps, I don't think that's on there yet. They did a remake of it, which I'm not going to watch, but.
Okay. Well, let me ask you something. Is Under Wraps about a mummy?
Yes, but they have a new version on there. So there's a new version, which I wouldn't watch. But the
so
old
watch
version,
the original one from the 90s.
Yes,
okay.
from the 90s. But there's lots of old goodies on there. There's Silly Symphonies. Remember my YouTube playlist for Halloween from last year where it had like the dancing skeletons? That is a Disney short, and that is on the channel. Plus lots of little like Mickey Mouse cartoons that are appropriate for Halloween. So yeah, there's some great stuff on there. Totally recommend if someone doesn't have a subscription. If you're a fan of Disney stuff, you might as well. I mean, it's not too expensive, and a lot of bundles are available. Like we get Disney Plus with ESPN, like this bundle, and we also get it with Hulu. So it's a steal, really, because there's a lot of content between all of those. So glad you liked it, Kat.
Yay.
Now we're going to move on to some other movies that we had in common. But again, this is only part one of our chat because we have a lot of movies in common this year. We have more movies in common this year than last year. Which is awesome because it gives us a lot more to talk about. Last year we kind of talked about like our individual movies and the few we had in common, but this year we have a ton. And another one we had in common was Silver Bullet from 1985, and this, as Kat and I both referenced, we watched it together in person, which added a lot to the experience, in my opinion.
It was awesome.
We did a whole chat about this already, so I will link that down below as I referenced earlier, but we'll touch on it a little bit in case there's anything we didn't say. So essentially the premise is, in a small town, brutal killings start to plague a close-knit community. A boy is convinced the murders are the doings of a werewolf, and it's a lot of fun from there. So the rating, 6.4 out of 10 on IMDb, 45% on Rotten Tomatoes, really low, very surprised about that. 3.2 out of 5 on Letterboxd, but the audience and regular people seem to like it because 91% of Google users liked it, which is a good number to me because I think that if you see it, you should like it, like a regular person. I don't know what critics, I guess they were seeing the corny Gary Busey stuff at the end with him getting tossed around. And they're like, this is terrible movie. It's horrible, but I love that. So to me, it was great.
Yeah, I mean, the things I just want to reiterate, is that nice cast. Gary Busey plays Uncle Red, Corey Haim plays Marty. Our favorite Terry O'Quinn plays Sheriff Joe Holler. And then you've got Everett McGill playing Reverend Lowe. So I thought it was pretty well cast.
Yeah.
Of course, it's based on the horror novella by Stephen King, which is called Cycle of the Werewolf, and I love Stephen King. And I do think this is a pretty good adaptation of one of his books. Not all of his books get turned into great adaptations, on film, but I do think this was a good one. And I know we kind of talked a little bit about this maybe in the chat, but Silver Bullet has a double meaning in this movie. It's the way the werewolf, of course, is killed. You use a silver bullet, but it's also the name of Marty's wheelchair. He is disabled. Both weapons are used to defeat the werewolf terrorizing Tarker's Mill. So it is great fun. Unlike the book, which really follows the werewolf for a whole entire year. Calendar year. This one, is not quite so much. I think it begins, pretty much halfway through, the year.
I think it begins on Halloween, doesn't it?
Yeah. And then it goes until, or does it begin in...
Or was it the end of school? It begins.
I think it was the end of school. It begins because we go through 4th of July.
We do go through Halloween, right?
And we get through Halloween, yes. Whereas the book starts in January. So, there are differences, and we talk all about that, in our chat. But
and we had a lot of laughs in the chat. I would recommend the chat.
It really is a good time. Yeah, it really is a good time. We watched this together, which made it even wonderful because it was a rewatch for me, but it was a first watch for Kelsi. And it was just wonderful, seeing somebody watch it with fresh eyes, and it had been a long time since I had seen it. So it was stuff like the surprise of Terry O'Quinn being in it. I remember Gary Busey. I would never forget him and Corey Haim. And actually Everett McGill, the only reason for him, it's really funny because I watched another movie that he's in, and then I was like, oh my gosh, he was in that movie, It's like he's in 2 movies that are in my marathon, which I thought was pretty great. And we're going to talk about that one later.
It's always fun when that happens, when you see an actor on multiple of your movies you're watching and you don't mean to, but you like notice it. I love when that happens.
Yes, me too. So That's all I have to say about, Silver Bullet, because we really did have a great time discussing it.
Yeah, we had a good time, and it was a very thorough discussion where we compared it to Cycle of the Werewolf because we read that as well for our fun list for Halloween time. But yeah, go and watch it. Like I said, it'll be linked here for sure. I love that chat. It's one of my favorite chats with you because we just did it live and it was just a lot of fun. And then there was stuff about pigs that was hilarious that we were talking about. Oh, it was a good time. All right, so moving right along. I'm so happy we watched that one together. The next movie we had in common, we did not watch it together, but we still both watched it, The People Under the Stairs, and this movie is from 1990. It's rated R. It is one of the movies that I consider one of the campy, also dark humor movies, because there is some comedy in it, but it's more on the darker side of things. So here's the premise. 2 adults and a juvenile break into a house occupied by a brother and sister, and their stolen children. There, they must fight for their lives. So again, that's very kind of general, but there's a lot of surprising things in the movie. We don't want to give everything away. And that's just the IMDb description. So the rating, 6.4 out of 10 on IMDb, 67% on Rotten Tomatoes, 57% on Metacritic, and 86% of Google users liked it. So it's fairly highly rated from Google users. And this is directed by Wes Craven, we should say. And yes. I feel like it's kind of an underrated movie of a Wes Craven movie. There are other ones that are also underrated by him. One that I watched last year, I believe it was Serpent and the Rainbow. That one blew me away as well. I had seen People Under the Stairs. It was a rewatch for me, but I really enjoyed it. I think I liked it more than you, but I know you said you had some fun facts. So I'm looking forward to your analysis and your little tidbits. So go ahead and take it away with your thoughts.
Well, first of all, I'm just going to reiterate that Everett McGill's in it. He plays the man. I mean, that's what his credit is, man. Yeah. He was also Reverend Lowe in Silver Bullet. Ving Rhames plays Leroy. Love Ving Rhames. And I really did love the actor that played Fool, who is the little boy. I loved the character. Yes. He's got a precious personality. And the actor is Brandon Quentin Adams. Of course, he is a grown man now. And it's considered American horror comedy is how it's listed. And I wanted to like it for 3 reasons. I'm just going to say it wasn't one of my favorites, but I wanted to like it for 3 reasons. The first reason is that Kelsi likes it so much.
It puts a lot of pressure on somebody when someone else likes the movie.
Yes. And I know when she loves something, she just, loves to talk about it and everything. And I was like, I want to like this movie. It was directed by Wes Craven, and I like Wes Craven. And of course it stars Ving Rhames in it. It's clearly not as bad as the other movies I've seen in this marathon or other marathons in general. It's supposed to be horror satire because it's really kind of talking about class, race, it tackles kind of like that subtle implication of ancestral relations. You've got... I
mean, there's lots of social commentary here, and it might be too political for some people, but I kind of like that it does it, but it does it in a light way. But it also has like some really, it's more of a thriller really than a horror movie, I would even say.
Yeah, I mean, it's got suspenseful, they do have suspenseful parts in it. But I will have to concede that after doing my research, and just kind of looking at it, I think I probably have rated it too low, in my opinion. I know we're not going to talk about ratings right now. And so I'm kind of glad we're not, because I do think either I'm going to have to rewatch it prior to us doing the ratings, or I'm just going to have to probably bump it up with the intent of rewatching it, because I don't know, after really delving into it and realizing that Wes Craven, had a point to it.
Yes,
besides just making it, a horror movie. And it was, like I said, there are some like cheesy, campy parts in it. And so it's like, what is this trying to be kind of thing? Right. But, when you look at it overall, thinking back, doing my research, and then I found some very interesting information that I want to share with you that I found.
I'm interested.
And
I can't wait.
That is back in October, November of 2020. Articles started appearing on movie and entertainment websites that Jordan Peele of Key and Peele, and the director, in my opinion, of 2 awesome horror movies, Get Out and Us, is set to produce a remake of The People Under the Stairs.
Wow.
Now, I have not seen anything since those articles in October and November of 2020, but I'm hoping that that's going to be true. So because I, kind of read through and looked at some of the information that was in these articles, I discovered that Jordan Peele is in a documentary called Horror Noir, A History of Black Horror. It is currently on Shudder right now. It's from 2019. I am planning to watch that to learn more because it gives information about, Black actors in film. And I have to agree with some of the things that he's pointed out. And one of the things is that Wes Craven is actually credited as being one of the first major horror directors to attempt to be more inclusive.
Yes.
Especially with The People Under the Stairs. So then I was like, he's got a point with that, so, and this is the importance, of what Peele says about the film. And he says, first of all, it's the first film where a young Black protagonist makes a positive impact.
Yes.
Okay. Secondly, Fool does not follow normal horror tropes when it comes to, having a Black person in a film. Doesn't die first. He's not the sacrificial Black character, and he prevails at the end.
Yes.
So I said, that is awesome. So I think thinking about that, I'm like, yeah, it's got issues, I don't know quite how to feel about it. Now I kind of know why the man and the woman are the way they are. I personally would like to see a remake. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of weird about seeing remakes of movies because, especially if they take a movie and they totally change the story, like I haven't seen the new Carrie, I haven't seen the new Pet Sematary because of that. I just think Pet Sematary and Carrie, the originals, were so awesome on their own. I can't imagine anything being better. Now, with that being said, I love the new It. I liked the old It and thought Tim Curry was fabulous, but I also did think Bill Skarsgård's portrayal of Pennywise the Clown is awesome too. And so, it just depends. It depends on how true they're going to stay to the original material. From what I understand, Jordan Peele's going to stay pretty close to the original material, which I think is awesome. And that's why I say I really would like to see a remake. Also, like I said, after researching this, I feel I need to rewatch the original. I think it may even be necessary because it really is going to impact my star rating. Do I think I'm going to be able to watch it before we have our, next chat, before we do our wrap up? I don't know if I'm going to be able to.
Right.
But just with what I remember from watching it, and that I do think my star rating is going to probably have to be bumped up. So I started off not really liking the film, doing the research, kind of thinking about it, kind of sitting with my feelings, kind of realizing what the underlying message was, finding out more about what Wes Craven is doing with the, being a little more inclusive. And I really am a fan of Jordan Peele. So I don't know, it's kind of changed my mind. And I really am looking forward to seeing that documentary now too.
Oh, I'm going to put that on my watch list as well. Thank you for calling that to my attention. But I also, like you, like Jordan Peele quite a bit. And so it's really great to hear him praise the movie because I actually knew about how Wes Craven was trying to be inclusive because I don't know where I read this or saw this, but I definitely read it at some point somewhere. Just don't know where or when, but I just knew about this ahead of time. And so I had that, maybe I was lucky because I had that in my mind when I watched it for the first time years and years ago. Also, I guess what kind of, I know some parts are campy, and then other parts it's like, what is it trying to be? But I think what shines above that is the lead actor, that wonderful kid actor that you shouted out. I think he's so fantastic that when you watch him, you're like, wow, he did such a great job. I don't know. I mean, that like really shines so much for me. And the oddness of the brother and sister,
Oh yeah,
that shines through too. And to me, that's disturbing. And that's kind of what takes it into the horror realm otherwise. And, you know, there's some like stuff that happens with like a hand and like stuff like that. That's kind of horrific, but otherwise it is kind of more like suspense thriller. I don't know. I can see your complaint about it trying to do so much at once, but like overall, I don't know, something about it when I first watched it, I really liked it. And rewatching it again, it's not like Nightbreed where I might have changed my, like, spoiler alert, because we're going to talk about that in a few minutes, but I might have changed my opinion. I didn't change my opinion upon rewatching this one. I really, I still like it. So, but it felt like a kind of like a new watch because it had been a long time. So it was good to see it again. But my opinion's the same as it was before, that I liked it. I'm just sorry you didn't like it more, but interested to see if you really do.
Well, and like I said, I really do think I need to rewatch it again. And
Yes.
I do think sometimes with films that we watch, I think, you know, you watch it the first time with new eyes, you miss things. And then sometimes when you watch it a second time, you catch things that you missed the first time, because every time you watch a movie, you're focusing on something different. You know, I'm trying to focus on the acting aspect of it, you know, because I am an actor. I'm also focusing on the writing part of it because I am a writer. You know, I'm trying to focus on, you know, the film part of it because that's part of my background as well. You know, so you're trying to focus on everything. And I know that you don't catch everything the first time because I'm doing a rewatch of The Office right now, so I can, you know, listen to the Office Ladies podcast. And sometimes, you know, a listener will send a question in or they'll discuss something. And I'm like, I didn't notice that. Oh my gosh, what was I looking at during that scene? You know, so clearly I was looking at something else. Something else caught my eye that I found more fascinating at the moment. And so I think when you watch something, you know, going into it that you know the premises, you know, some of the surprises, then you really can pay more attention to the details. And I do think that's probably one detriment of watching so many movies at one time for these marathons.
That is true.
You know, I mean, we're not watching these from a super critical point of view like film critics do, but I really do think, in all fairness to some movies that we're like borderline about, that a rewatch really would, you know, be more necessary to give it a fair shot. Like
just
I said,
pointing out, last year you said maybe I have to watch Christmas Evil again because you didn't know after we talked about it how you really felt. But I mean, no, you didn't like it, but you were like, maybe I should rewatch it again after the things you said. So I'm just pointing that out with Christmas on the horizon that you said that.
Yeah. I probably should rewatch it. But you know, and also too, I mean, every time we do watch something and something we consider a dud or we think is horrible, we're like, nothing could be worse than this movie.
And then we see something later.
And then we see something worse and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't even believe that there's something worse than that. But I will not put The People Under the Stairs in that category. I wouldn't say that The People Under the Stairs was terrible. I would recommend it to people. I would recommend it to anybody who watches horror because, you know, like I said, art is subjective. I mean, there are some movies that I like, you know, that people aren't going to agree with, that think are stupid. I mean, there are people out there that do not like Hereditary or Midsommar, and I like both of those,
Me too.
a lot because I found they were super creepy for a variety of reasons,
Yes.
you know, but I also do think your age has to do a lot with it. I think also the time period of when the movie was shot. Some movies hold up better than others, you know.
And preferences. And also we talked about in one of our previous chats, like, you know, you look at the acting more. I look at I like the cheesiness and I also look at the story. So we have different preferences. And I also really like to look at like the artistic palette of like the movie, like, oh, the color scheme and the set design and stuff of that nature, like the production value. So you and I do look at different things. And I think that also affects things and how you feel about a movie and the overall rating you're going to give it.
Yes, yes. And especially too, when did you watch something for the first time has a lot to
Yes.
do with it too. What was your age when you watched something the first time? What were you experiencing at that time? You know,
True.
sometimes if you're experiencing something that is similar to what's going on in a movie, sometimes you don't like the movie very much because it's kind of mirroring what's going on with you or a
Yeah.
fear you have or whatever the case may be. But I do have to say there were things that were good in it. So I think before I 100% give it a rating, which I'm glad we decided not to do that today, I need to really make a pros and cons list and know that I am going to give it another chance. And, I would love to be able to see a remake of it. I will say that too, especially if Jordan Peele's involved in it.
So you asked me how I felt about the remake because I didn't know before we did this chat. I mean, till literally you just said it a second ago. I had no idea that they were planning to remake it. I had not heard that news. I am intrigued. I'm always tentative about, when they say they're going to remake a movie, especially one that I really like the original.
Mhm.
I actually like when they change the story. So you referenced Pet Sematary. I do want to comment on that because I love the original, but a lot of people think the original is campy, but people still love it. I love the original. I think it's creepy, but I do think there's a campiness to it. I did watch the remake and it changed things on its head, but in a good way. I didn't want to see a shot for shot remake of the original because I love the original so much.
Mhm.
So I wanted something different. Other people were disappointed that they changed things. I personally liked it. And I was surprised by the hate around it after people were saying, we didn't like it. And I was like, what?
Well,
I loved
also
it.
too, you got to go back to the source material. The
Well, I haven't
second
read
one
Pet
doesn't follow
Sematary.
the book. So that's another thing too. If you're one that you like, a movie to follow the source material a little more faithfully, then it's gonna sway you on how you feel about it. I
That's
do
true.
think also you have to keep in mind how closely you watch and read something, because you can read something and then turn around and watch. And I think that's what happened with Cabal and Nightbreed is when you watch a movie or a television show right after reading, sometimes it's hard. It's hard to
Yes.
not make comparisons. And if it doesn't follow the source material faithfully, it's hard to watch the movie for me.
I do agree with that as well, because we saw that with our Cabal versus Nightbreed, our read and then our watch. It changed everything for me. We'll get into that. Like I keep saying we're going to get into it, but like it keeps coming up. Like it was so like, I can't even believe, like I've been touting Nightbreed all year. Like since we started our marathons, I've been like, it's an underrated horror movie, but like, it's not like it's not good, but I just have changed feelings about it.
Yes.
But just to close out our thoughts on the people under the stairs, I do want to say about rewatching. I agree with you. You don't always absorb things. And this is a good example. So I am rewatching Buffy the Vampire Slayer right now, and it's a lot of fun, just like you're rewatching The Office. I mean, I've seen this show a billion times, just like I've seen Lost a ton of times. I've seen The Office a ton of times. There's a whole bunch of shows, even Seinfeld. But like, I find that even though I rewatch them and I've seen them a bunch, I always find something new or something that I had forgotten. And I'm like, how could I have forgotten this? I've seen it a billion times. I find that more with shows because I think you're absorbing so much in a quick amount of time, which kind of fits into our point about this marathon. You said, we're fitting in so many movies. It's not like we're not being critical of them, but I don't always take notes during the movies because I am going for volume. I do sometimes make notes, but a lot of times I'm kind of like wanting to just sit back and like take it in and relax. So I don't get my pen and paper out like I should. I don't go and get it in the other room. And that's my big mistake sometimes. But when you're watching for a volume, like in a goal of like, oh, I got to get this many movies accomplished, you're not always absorbing everything. That's a good point too. And then finally, I agree with your statement about watching things at a certain time in your life matters because where you are will affect how you feel. A good example of that, another show, my one big guilty pleasure is Dawson's Creek. I love that show. It's my big, like, embarrassed to admit that I love show that I don't always talk about.
I love Dawson's Creek.
Oh, you
too.
do? Good.
Yeah.
Good. I'm not alone. So that's like my big thing. Like, cause it is kind of like teenage drama-y, but it's really smartly written. It is written like teenagers would never talk like they talk in the show, but it doesn't matter. To me, it's a very smart show and just how they talk. And I like the dialogue a lot, even though it's not realistic. I still like it. And also Dawson, I related to him because he wanted to be a director. And at the time when I first first watched it, I wanted to be a director. So like I related so much to Dawson, but originally I wanted Joey and Pacey to end up together. Upon my latest rewatch, like 5 years ago, I completely changed my mind, and that's never happened. I've rewatched it like 7 times. It might be the most show I've ever rewatched.
Well, yeah, and part of it is because when you originally watched it,
I had different feelings. Yes.
Well, not only that, your age, you know, and what you thought would have been appropriate for Dawson at that time, or Pacey or whatever.
Exactly.
But, you know, now that you're an adult, it's a little bit different too.
So that's a perfect example of how like completely like so much time had passed between the time I first watched it to like my 7th time rewatching it, like most recently. I've gained a lot of knowledge in that time. I have a lot of differences of opinions than I did when I was a freaking teenager. So yeah, like you said, it really does depend on when you watch it. And also the information you have going into the watch, maybe for the first time or even the rewatch of it, that also affects things. So yeah, lots of differences, but I love your points there. Very, like, who knew we were going to have such like intense conversation about the people under the stairs, but it is a movie with a lot of commentary. So I think it's appropriate that we had a lot of commentary about it. So it kind of all makes sense. It works. All right, moving on to a movie that I think doesn't have much commentary. I think it's just kind of meant to be watched and enjoyed for fun. And it's got a lot of heart though to it. The kind of the soul of it, it's got this heart to it. And by the way, we talked about the people under the stairs having a great child lead actor. There's a great, awesome, cute kid actress in the Monster Squad. The little girl, the little sister in the movie is just darling.
Yeah, she's precious.
I can't even believe that they got her. Like, she's a fantastic actress. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old. I mean, so adorable. Anyway, we'll get there. But the movie's from 1987. It was a rewatch for me personally. A young group of monster fanatics attempt to save their hometown from Count Dracula and his monsters. Yes, it's campy. Yes, it's a little corny. I can look past that because I think it's about the feeling you get when you watch it and just about a group of friends. And I don't know, I like the story of the friends. So the ratings, 7 out of 10 on IMDb, 60% on Rotten Tomatoes, 61% on Metacritic, but 90% of Google users like it. So that's fairly high. That means that the cult appeal and the personal appeal for most people is pretty high. So Kat, I know you didn't like it as much as me because I take a peek at your ratings, but so I'm kind of cheating, but what did you think about it? Give us your reasons and your feelings. Oh no.
Well, again, this was a movie I wanted to like for 3 reasons.
I liked it. Is one of the reasons.
Kelsi is the number 1 reason because Kelsi liked it so much. And it kind of looked neat. I was like, oh, this looks like kind of a neat movie. I am a fan of Universal monsters just in general, so I like that. And then I just thought it was a neat premise. You know, you've got this group of kids who like to watch horror movies, and it's got the Universal movies. And I remember as a kid watching those black and white movies on a Sunday morning, you know, after Abbott and Costello, you know, so I love watching that. So I just figured this would be, you know, really neat. But I actually fell asleep throughout the movie. I mean, it was one of the movies.
Like my parents. Oh no.
When you said that, I wanted to laugh so much because I'm like, is this an age thing? I don't know. There was like so many parts. So it's quite possible that I missed like big pieces of it. I don't know. I had to keep going back and be like, what's going on? I mean, what I did like in it, I mean, there were things that I did like I mentioned already. I liked the concept of the Monster Squad. I liked their little club. You know, they needed to add the little sister in the club. That was my only thing. You know, you had that little baby in there. She's so cute. The Universal monsters were great. I think the way they looked was awesome, you know, for that time period. I mean, this was 1987, but the special effects, you know, I thought were wonderful. And, you know, with the way they looked, in fact, I'm going to be honest, I think the Wolfman in this movie looked better than the werewolf in Silver Bullet.
I mean, because that looked like a costume in Silver Bullet. It looked so like the hand, you saw the hand, it was like a glove.
but he looked great. So, I mean,
that's a good point.
They had really some redeeming qualities about it. I mean, I think the story itself was kind of hokey about Dracula. I didn't know why he had to like drag all the monsters in to do what he had to do or whatever.
He was like their leader. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It was just kind of bizarre. I did like the fact that the little girl, and Frankenstein form a friendship.
I love that.
That was just so super sweet, so I did like that. So I guess my question is, should I revisit it? I mean, that's the thing. Or
well, I mean, if you kept falling asleep, like maybe you really didn't absorb, but maybe you were falling asleep because you weren't interested. I don't know if you were like super tired that day or if you really were just like totally bored by the concept.
Yeah, I don't know. Because I mean, I love the Goonies, and that's about a group of kids.
To me, it isn't like the vein of the Goonies, but I'm not going to say like Goonies is better. I mean, Goonies is like one of the best movies of all time.
So I guess maybe that's part of it. It's like, are you trying to be like the Goonies, kind of thing? But I just think
it's like, I mean, it's so different because it's like Goonies with monsters, though. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, the group of kids aren't as likable. That's part of it, I think, besides the little girl. But the rest of the kids, I mean, it's not like the actors in the Goonies. I mean, Sean Astin in the Goonies. I mean, of course, we know him as Sam from Lord of the Rings. If you guys are Lord of the Rings fans, which I'm a huge Lord of the Rings fan.
Josh Brolin's in it.
Yes. I mean, and he's incredible in it as like the big brother and so much good stuff. I mean, and Chunk is so fun, and I don't know. And you have one of the Coreys in the Goonies. But so Monster Squad, I feel like the kids overall, besides the little girl, it's not like my favorite group of kids, but I love how like the lead kid is wearing the Stephen King Rules shirt. I just like the concept of what they love, like the monsters. And the dialogue is cheesy. I will say that. Like, so I have only seen it twice. It's not like it's one of my favorite movies ever. So I'm not super like bummed that you didn't like it. I'm just surprised because I thought it had enough of a good feel and like, some Halloween-y elements. To me, it's a perfect vibe movie where you don't have to think too much about like the dialogue's kind of campy. You could put it aside. The elements of Halloween are there. And that's why I personally like it. And that's what I focus on. I guess I choose not to focus on certain aspects of it per se. And that helps me like it more. But I totally understand your feelings. Maybe to answer your question, maybe it would be worth a rewatch, but only you could decide because I don't know how tired you were and what was the cause of your tiredness.
I don't know. I think if I would have been watching something else, I don't think I would have fallen asleep.
Yeah, maybe you're right then. Maybe you should just give it a pass. You gave it a try,
It's just really not even, to me, it's not even comparable to how I feel about the People Under the Stairs. Like I feel strongly that I should rewatch People Under the Stairs. This one, I'm just like, I watched it, been there, done that. Would I say don't watch the movie? Of course, I wouldn't tell anybody not to watch it. I mean, I think there are some people that would think it was fabulous, I mean,
it's kind of a cult movie. There's like a huge audience for it in terms of people who love Halloween. They really like this movie. So I just think it's like, time and place and like what you want to focus on. And I think you should just say, I gave it a try. You don't have to rewatch everything to reform an opinion. Exactly. It is what it is.
It is what it is. Thank you for giving me that pass.
Of course. I have stronger feelings about a different movie that you didn't like that I love, but we'll talk about that later. Even though I really can't even defend it. It's going to be in part 2. Part 2 will be interesting, guys. Believe me, it will be interesting. So please tune in for the second part of this chat. But yes, let's move on to a movie that I know you liked. And I did not watch it this year, but we're going to talk about it because I actually watched it in the last 2 years. And we both read the book that it was based on. And that is The Halloween Tree. And we're just going to lightly mention it because Kat wants to talk about the movie. And I have one more thing to say about the book that I didn't get to say in our readathon wrap up. But first, let me give you some, layout of the movie and the ratings. So Halloween Tree is from 1993. It's an animated film. It's, in my opinion, this is throwing in an opinion, and I'm supposed to be giving you a synopsis, but in my opinion, it's beautifully animated and I love it. And it really, after having read the book, yes, good. After having read the book and that passage, I even read out loud the passage about the Halloween tree. They brought the Halloween tree with all the pumpkins on it to life. So marvelous the way they depicted the tree, in my opinion. I thought that was a great, great adaptation of the tree. It came right off the page onto the film. Really pretty colors. I had not read the book when I originally watched the movie, so you kind of had a different experience than me because when I was watching it, it was just a movie. I had not read the book. Now, after having read the book, I'm looking back on my experience, and I can't wait to rewatch it in a future year to really get, I guess,
I think you'll love it. I think you'll love it. After reading the book, because of how beautiful it is.
Yes.
I think that you'll love it even more.
I mean, because I really loved it the first time. So I have no
Mhm.
doubt that my love will only increase, as you said. So the premise, 4 children learn the origins of Halloween customs while trying to save the life of a friend. Very, very simple premise, but it works. And there's a lot packed in with the premise.
There is no Rotten Tomatoes ratings for this. 86% Google users and 7.9 out of 10 on IMDb. So I think that's pretty great for an animated film.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah. And I think
Mhm.
people like it's so wonderful and sing song because they bring it to life. And by the way, there's some impressive voices behind it. Ray Bradbury himself is a voice in the film. I believe he's the narrator.
He's the narrator, which I thought was fabulous because he's the author of the Halloween tree.
Exactly.
So I love that.
So who could bring it to life more accurately than him? I mean, so
Mhm.
that was perfect choice. Also, Leonard Nimoy
Yes,
is
he
Mr.
plays.
Munchroud.
Yes, and of course, Leonard Nimoy from Star Trek. I mean, he
Exactly,
plays
Spock.
Yeah, he plays Spock.
Yeah.
So
So that was really nice to see his voice. I mean, at first glance, you would think that like his voice would not work with that character, but it does work. I think overall, personally, I think it works. But just before we get into the movie discussion, I want to say about the book that I didn't get to say, and then I'll toss over to your thoughts on the movie. But I love how, and the movie does this too, actually, the premise of the book and movie, I love how it's a perfect Halloween read because it really represents, when you think of what autumn is, basically you've got the passageway between life and death of nature. Like nature, in summer, it's all in bloom, everything is like alive. Then you go into fall, leaves are starting to crumble and die, making way for the winter time, which could symbolize like death, human death. But then you've got the rebirth again in spring. And so fall is kind of that go-between, which I feel like this movie kind of symbolizes the go-between between life and death, because you got these friends learning about the origins of Halloween, which is a celebration of that time, of the space between the living, like you're living, but you have to accept that you're going to die one day. And basically the movie follows that acceptance that you have, and there's all these traditions where different cultures are trying to come to grips with that, and they celebrate the passing on of life of their loved ones and stuff like that. So it was just fascinating to see the exploration of that in terms of different cultures, but also how that's mirrored in the whole celebration of that time of year, how the cultures do that. And I don't know, it's awesome. I just thought it was so well done. It's such a really intense concept, but done so well in the movie and the book. And that's what I love.
Well, I think I love it too, because the book would be a perfect read aloud. It'd be a perfect book for you to listen to, I think, on audio. So the fact that they were able to, make a film and have Ray Bradbury narrate it like he was reading it aloud. I mean, that's what I just think is fantastic about it.
Yes.
I think it was a really wonderful adaptation. And that's thanks to Hanna-Barbera, who, is famous for, making the Flintstones, the Jetsons, my personal favorite, Scooby-Doo, so many beloved cartoon characters over the years. So I just thought that was wonderful. I think, that lends to it. There are differences and similarities between the book and the film. And one of the main things is the fact that there are 8 characters in the book and only 4 of them in the film.
That's an interesting
All
comparison.
8 characters were boys in the book, but there is one girl. One of the 4 is a girl, and her name is Jenny. The other thing, because of that, the trick-or-treaters' costumes determine where the children journey. So they don't get to visit all of the places that they visit in the book, but still what they touch on in the film is really good, I think. You also discover what's wrong with Pip early on in the film, whereas it's revealed later on in the book.
Right.
And another thing that's a difference is that who decides on the bargain for Pip's life? In the book, it's decided by one person, whereas in the movie, it's decided by someone else. So I thought that was pretty fascinating, that they made the choice to change that. As far as similarities, the children accompany Mr. Munchroud on this fantastical adventure. It's the kind of adventure you would want to go on as a child that loves Halloween, I think,
Oh, yeah.
And they're going to save their friend Pip. And in the process, you get a history lesson. You get to visit all these wonderful places and learn a little bit about the origins of Halloween or how people do their rituals. Like I said before, the costumes determine the stops throughout the time. The costumes are similar. The mood, the tone, the setting, very atmospheric and thematic. It's the perfect read. It's the perfect movie to watch during the fall or right during Halloween, even if you watch it on Halloween. And again, it's got that wonderful message to me that was pretty much a message of all the books and stories that I read for my readathon was what lengths would you go to for a friend?
Yes.
100%. What would you do for the love of your friend? So I do have some thoughts though. And I wanted to ask you what you thought.
Sure.
Do you think the children know Mr. Malmstroud? It seems like they know him better in the book and they know his house better in the book, but in the movie, it seems like it's like a surprise. He's kind of like a surprise to them.
Like they didn't know he was there. I kind of got the glimpse that they didn't know he was there. They knew about the house, but I don't think they knew him in the book.
So in either one, you don't think they knew Mr. Malmstroud? Prior.
No, as a person, no, I don't think so. I think they knew the house in the book, but I think didn't the house just, I mean, it's been a while since I watched the movie. It's been 2 years now, but do you think that they make a comment about the house just appearing?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like in the movie, it seems like the house just appears and it's there. Like they come upon it, whereas it seems like the house existed in the book so that maybe they didn't know Mr. Malmstroud personally, but they knew of the house. That's the gist I was getting. I was just
like a creepy house. Like they know of like, oh, there's this creepy house over there over the ravine or, something like that. But I just assumed that it was kind of something that popped up because of Pip's whole dilemma, like his fight for staying alive, because maybe that's kind of like a mystical thing that just popped out because of the situation. And that's maybe why they never met him before, or because maybe you can't even like interact with him until there's some kind of thing happening, like you're in between life and death. There's some kind of special reason that you're able to see him and talk to him. Maybe
so. Maybe that's what it is, because they do end up making a bargain with him. He has that information. But the thing is, if I had to pick what I like better, because I liked both of them, don't get me wrong, and gave them very high ratings, but I think I prefer the book. I just always tend to. It's the same thing with Cycle of the Werewolf and Silver Bullet. I preferred the book. Same thing with Nightbreed, preferred Cabal. But I just think, there's a lot that a book can encompass that they just can't, put everything on the screen. But I love the movie. I love the fact that Ray Bradbury was the one that narrated it. I love that my very first introduction to him, which is so odd that this is the first thing I've ever read to him in my 52 years on this planet. But I'm glad my introduction was such a positive one. So I look so forward to, reading more of his work and watching more of his movies, or watching not his movies per se, but movies that were made from his
I have to recommend Something Wicked This Way Comes, because it was really well done. And that's another, obviously, a movie based off of his work, Something Wicked This Way Comes, the novel. And that one's much longer, the book itself, than Halloween Tree. Halloween Tree is a pretty easy read in terms of length. I mean, their language is still pretty intense, but it's also beautiful, and you could really appreciate it if you take your time with it. And so I do want to comment, I like how you bring up book versus movie, which do you like better? Now I will say I become a book person, but traditionally my whole life my dad was a movie buff. He kind of raised me to be a movie buff. I wanted to be a director for many years, and then I just wanted to work in film. Then I just ended up working in TV instead. But basically my point is I have a very, very high appreciation for film, and it's almost like my first love type of thing. Also TV, that's like a big thing of mine. I love just anything that is filmed. It takes a lot of work to bring something out, but you don't get the details. I agree with you on that. But in this case, so I agree with Cabal. I liked Cabal, the book. better than the movie Nightbreed, which surprised me. That was a big surprise. I didn't think I'd feel that way. However, in this case, I'd have to rewatch it to really give a definitive answer, but I think I leant towards the movie just because it was so beautifully done and animated. If it had been a live action movie, I don't think I would have felt that way. I think I would.
But I'll have to say, I think Tim Burton could turn this into a fabulous live action, don't you think?
If anyone could, it could be him. And in fact, our member Melissa compared the book, The Halloween Tree. She said it had a Tim Burton vibe.
Yes. And I had to agree with her on that.
She brought a wonderful point up.
I think that he really could make a fabulous film with it.
He could, if anybody could, he could. You're right on that. But in terms of this rendition, obviously Burton wasn't involved. I think it worked. And
I do too. Absolutely.
But if anyone else did a live action, I don't know if I'd like it.
I think it could be a live action, or like if he could do it in the same vein that he's done Nightmare Before Christmas, or like James and the Giant Peach. That to me, like, I love those kind of movies. Coraline is like that. I just think
stop motion.
Yes,
with like figures.
If he, I could see the Halloween Tree being like that.
Yes.
Even more so than a live action one. So I think they did fabulous. It was done in the 90s, early 90s. And like you said, but I think that's, we have to say that's because Hanna-Barbera was behind that.
Yes.
So they did a fabulous job. But,
they really did. And it's very close. I'm not bashing the book, because I love the book too. Mm-hmm. It's super close. It's just that the movie is so easy to absorb. I think that's part of it. The book, you have to take your time, as I said. You have to really sit with it. Whereas the movie, you could put on every Halloween and it gives you the vibe instantly. No work required kind of. Books take work, which is a good thing, because it's really rewarding. And sometimes it's a lot more rewarding than the movie. And that's true in a lot of cases. There's a lot of books that I actually like better than the adaptations, like The Stand.
Well, and I do think the Halloween Tree would be a perfect one that you could listen on audio.
Yes, and I want to do that next time I read it. Yeah.
And
that's how I listened to Something Wicked This Way Comes. I half read and then half listened, and the listening helped. I love Something Wicked This Way Comes because of listening to it. Whereas the Halloween Tree, next time I reread, I guess I'll listen to it, and it'll be like a new experience, it'll be different.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you liked it. Wonderful. So happy.
Yep. Love it.
I would recommend it.
Yes, definitely.
Especially if you're looking for something with the autumn vibe, with the Halloween specific vibe. And it teaches you a lot about history that I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we've talked about a lot of movies, and we've got one left. Before we go into the next one, let's talk about disappointments. And this is going to be fun. I know it seems negative, but it's always fun to hear what's a disappointment. Kat, you lead it off. What are your disappointments?
Oh, well, my disappointments, were People Under the Stairs, Monster Squad.
I'm ready for the one that's going to hit me hard.
Session 9.
No, I'm so sad. We'll get to it next time. But yeah, go ahead.
Driller Killer.
Oh, we agree on that. We definitely agree on that.
And I don't guess I was really so much disappointed with The Brood and Let's Scare Jessica to Death. I think it was time period with those. So I really can't say they're disappointments so much, but they're not really at the top of my list, I guess I would say.
That's funny because those were my surprises. And
yeah,
Stephen King,
isn't that crazy? I know, it's
your
so
boy
crazy.
Stephen King agrees with me.
But really major disappointments for me, I would honestly have to say, were Driller Killer and Session 9, with People Under the Stairs and Monster Squad following behind that. But probably my biggest disappointment, though, well, I can't say it's my biggest disappointment. One that I was surprised I was disappointed in was Nightbreed, because I had seen Nightbreed years ago, loved it. Now I'm watched the director's cut, which is supposed to be better. However, after reading Cabal, changed my mind. I feel pretty similar to how you feel about it.
Yeah, and I guess that leads into my disappointments, which I'll cap off with Nightbreed so we could talk about it further. But firstly, my first disappointment is that you were disappointed in so much stuff that I liked. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't even write that down. I was just like, I'm gonna scare her and say that I was disappointed that she was disappointed. Honestly, the session 9 thing is a big disappointment that you didn't like it, but more so that you and Paul didn't like it. And then I asked my friend Juan what he thought. By the way, check out his channel, Plagued by Visions. I was like, he was having a live stream and I asked, like, did you ever watch session 9? And if so, what's your opinion? He's like, yeah, it was okay. I was like, damn it, only I like it. What the hell? Anyway, so Paul didn't like it either. He totally agreed with you. And we had already knew that you didn't like it going into our watch of it. And so I was so hoping we were going to come out and I could have told you, well, Paul disagrees and he liked it. But no, he was like, in fact, you and I were pre-chatting like the other day and he walked by while you were on and then we were talking about session 9 and he was like, garbage, it was garbage.
And I was like, rubbish.
And then I was very sad and ganged up on it. It was so sad. Anyway, that was kind of disappointing, I will be honest. But in terms of my movies and what I did or did not accomplish, these are my disappointments. The more serious side. I was disappointed that I had to replace Near Dark and Ghost Watch. Yeah. Those were 2 films I was so excited for. And Near Dark was supposed to be on Shudder. They made a whole big announcement that it was back. It was on Shudder. It's literally available streaming nowhere else. Then all of a sudden, when I announced my movie list on my YouTube channel, someone's like, oh, by the way, it's not up there anymore. I was like, no. I was super, super bummed. Ghost Watch, very hard to find. I was looking forward to those and I had to replace them. That was a disappointment, but it's just more to look forward to in the future if they ever become available more easily. So, I mean, I'm not too bummed, but I just really wanted to get to them. Then in terms of movies I did watch, I was disappointed with Malignant. Everyone was buzzing about it. I thought it was okay, but I wasn't super impressed. And I actually fell asleep. Not because of the movie itself. I was really tired, I will admit. Paul didn't know I was sleeping for 20 minutes. And then he said something and I didn't answer. He's like, are you asleep? And I was like, oh. I was on a chair and I wasn't facing him.
That is pretty funny.
And so he thought I was awake. But once he commented, I didn't respond. He found out I was sleeping and he had to rewind it 20 minutes. And he's like, what do you remember last? And I was like, So we had to rewind it and I don't know, I knew something was off with the villain and then there's a twist and I was like, okay, well, I didn't like the way the villain looked and I figured it had to be something like what ends up being revealed anyway. I don't know, just there was so much buzz and it didn't live up to it for me. This is going to hurt you possibly, but 1922, it was a decent adaptation. We'll talk more about it. It was definitely faithful, but I just felt like it dragged on and it was boring, whereas I wasn't bored when I read the story. But the movie, I felt like it could have been cut down. And so it was just too long, but it was faithful. I didn't feel like it translated because of the length. If they had cut it, I thought it could be a lot more, entertaining, fast paced. It wouldn't have lost my attention. This is also going to hurt you. Creep. I didn't like it. And Paul didn't like it either. I watched it with Paul. Yeah, we were very disappointed. I love the end, but to me, it took too long to get there. You knew something was off the whole time, but it still didn't pack a punch like I thought. And I love found footage. I love that element of it. I loved how creepy he was, but after a while, it was like, let's just get to whatever's going to happen. And so it just waited too late for me. But the very end was great. Like I almost would say it was one of my almost not disappointments, so it just makes the disappointment list, but it's there. A much bigger disappointment, The Black Coat's Daughter. You did not watch this. No. Boring. Had some atmosphere, but quickly lost me. I was expecting so much more. It's a possession type of film having to do with evil spirits and possession and stuff like that. I don't know. Could have been so much more entertaining. Took too long. Driller Killer, we agree. Yeah. And we'll talk about this. We're going to tease that it's going to be a big thing in our part 2 chat. We're going to open up with Driller Killer. So we'll get there next time. Stay tuned. Then finally, 2 more. Ghoulies. I was hoping to see more of the ghoulies. It's these little creatures in this film. We didn't get to see a lot of the creatures. They were just thrown in. That was the best part of the movie, was them, but they were not featured nearly enough. More so this like annoying guy who was the villain. He was like a sorcerer. That was more of the concentration of the film, and I didn't like that. I thought it was boring. I thought the story could have been tighter. And then finally, to agree with you and to lead us into our Nightbreed discussion, I somehow, some way, even though it was a rewatch, I am disappointed with Nightbreed because after reading Cabal, my feelings have completely changed in that I think some of the movie just does not work anymore. So before we get into it, the movie's from 1990, by the way, so it's quite old. The story: a troubled young man is drawn to a mythical place called Midian, where a variety of friendly monsters and I would say some not so friendly, personally, I would add in,
Right.
are hiding from humanity. Meanwhile, a sadistic serial killer is looking for a patsy. The rating, 6.5 out of 10 on IMDb, 4.3 out of 5 on Shudder, and 89% of Google users liked it. It does have a cult following.
Mhm.
People do like it. I do consider it more fantasy than horror, to agree with what you said earlier.
Yes.
And I will say that we watched, to reiterate, the director's cut. So everything we talk about will be from the director's cut, and that is a very different film than the original theatrical
Mhm.
release. So just to
Mhm.
make sure that you guys know which version we're talking about, because people do say that the director's cut is better, and I agree with that. Because I think the first time I watched it multiple times. The first time was the theatrical cut, not as good. If we had to compare the two movies, yes, Nightbreed, the director's cut, is definitely better than the theatrical cut. But in terms of overall, I just don't think it's as good of a movie as I originally did before reading Cabal. Cabal's way darker, way more
Mhm.
brooding. You get lots more about Boone and his thoughts. And Midian just seems like a more menacing place. I don't know. What do you think, Kat?
I agree with you. I mean, it is considered more of a dark fantasy horror film. I just found that I liked how, they have the monsters, but it seemed like they were trying to humanize the monsters, whereas they were not so much so in the book. I think also too, reading Cabal and then directly watching the movie right afterwards, you could clearly see the difference, the mood between the two different, between the book and the movie. I would have liked to have seen more of Decker on film, because he was such a creepy character as his button face or whatever. Whereas I felt like you saw more of him in the book, like you got more into his psyche and
well, that's what I loved.
Terrible or whatever.
In the book, you get like that the mask, when he puts on the button face mask, it's almost like it possesses him. It's almost like it's got a separate voice in his head that is the mask. So it's truly like his killing urges are a whole separate part of his personality. It's really like, his deepest, darkest side. Not that his other side is like good, obviously not, because he's trying to get Boone in trouble and have him take the blame for his crimes. But I don't know. I just think that Decker is just so much more fleshed out in the book, whereas it's a lost opportunity in the movie.
Right. Now they did pick somebody really awesome to play Decker in the film, and that was David Cronenberg,
the director.
And he has been doing a lot of more acting recently, because I was looking up information on him, but so he is an actor in this film. He plays Decker. But what's fascinating is he was a director for The Brood, which you and I watched for this marathon. Also The Dead Zone, which was a Stephen King film,
which I hope to watch.
I thought was awesome. And then he was also Scanners, which is something that you watched.
Yes, like I was even going to say that it's been like a Cronenberg kind of.
Yeah, so it's really neat that he was in this film. Also, I wanted to mention that Doug Bradley's in it. He plays Dirk Leisberg in the film Nightbreed. He is well known for being Pinhead in the Hellraiser movies.
Yes.
So I really liked, knowing that fact about it. And then Craig Sheffer plays Boone, or Cabal, because he starts off as Boone and then becomes Cabal. And he's a well-known actor, and has been in a variety of film and television. I think for me, like the character of Narcissus is more comedic in the film, and kind of took away and kind of made that a little campy kind of. I didn't really like that, because he was not like that in the book. So
I think he ruined the film. After, like, it didn't bother me. Like his character, like I thought it was campy and fun. His character didn't bother me too much when I watched it without having read the book. But having read the book, that is such an important character, because he kind of helps out and stuff. And even like Laurie becomes attached to him in the book at the end, like, and he's kind of protects Laurie, where he almost takes advantage of Laurie and is really creepy and gross in the movie. I just think he ruined, after having read the book, he ruined the movie for me. Like,
I do too. And I think that's when you read a book and then instantly watch, you see those, the comparison so clearly.
Yes.
I think that when Laurie explores the underground of Midian, one thing about that, it kind of reminded me of Star Wars. Midian's the home of the Nightbreed. They live underground. It kind of reminded me of the bar scene in Star Wars: A New Hope, when Luke Skywalker and Obi-Wan and C-3PO, they're going into the cantina to look for, a pilot. Well, the whole, catching the scenes kind of was like when Lori was like exploring the underground.
And there was music,
I'm sure that was not the intention, but that's kind of like what it kind of reminded me of. I just thought the film was not as dark as the novella.
I agree.
And like the book Cabal, Nightbreed would not be my first introduction to Clive Barker on film. I wouldn't recommend Cabal as the first book to read by Clive Barker. I would not recommend Nightbreed being the first film you watch by Clive Barker. Hellraiser by far should be your first introduction to Clive Barker as a filmmaker.
Hellraiser is my favorite horror movie of all time. Like if I had to pick one horror movie, like that's my ultimate favorite, I always say Hellraiser, which is so weird that I like that movie so much because there's so much sexual stuff in it, but it's like a lot more than that. There's a lot like deeper stuff into it than that. And like the monsters, like if you could call them the Cenobites, are really what shines. Like the design of them, the acting, the lines will tear your soul apart. I would say definitely go to Hellraiser first. If you're going to watch a Clive Barker directed film, definitely start with Hellraiser. That's like his most well-known one. That's like the best quality in my opinion. However, my dad rewatched Hellraiser and he was like, it's really bad. I was like, what?
Well, and that they're thinking about doing a remake of Hellraiser.
Yes, I actually would
cast a woman as Pinhead.
I didn't hear that.
Yes. So I'm not sure. I mean,
I'd watch
Doug
it,
Bradley
he's iconic.
Pinhead. I mean, I'm sorry. I can't see anybody else.
I'm all for equality, and that's like a cool take on it. But like Ghostbusters too. We talked about this in our like Halloween last year. Ghostbusters with the women. I don't know. Why even redo it like that? I don't know. Anyway, that's a whole nother tangent, but I agree with you. He is iconic, but maybe my interest is a little piqued. Like, how are they going to make it work? So I might check it out just to see, although it'll hurt me at the same time, probably.
Well, and I mean, I have to say, even though I was a little disappointed, and that was because of reading the book first, I don't discount Nightbreed. I do think it is definitely a film to watch. I think it has merit. I think it's, should be part of a horror, fans' repertoire of movies to watch. But I am glad that you recommended reading the director's cut and, alerted me to that fact, because I think I would be more disappointed, considering it kind of strays a little bit. But again, I do prefer the book over the movie.
Me too. In this case, I agree with you 100%. And why the director's cut is so important, as I said, on the DVD, Clive Barker is literally like sitting there telling you, I'm about to present you the director's cut, which has 40 extra minutes of footage. It's only 20 minutes longer than the original theatrical release, but that's because we replaced 20 minutes of original footage and added 20 more minutes of footage as well. So it's 40 new minutes, but only 20 minutes longer in that case. But he talks about why it's important and how like the studio was not going with his vision at all because they didn't want to see the monsters triumph. I understand that. But I do think it's better than the theatrical, but I will say it does have merits in general, even compared to the book. I'll shout some out that I thought of right now. I agree with you about the Star Wars comparison, but I will say it was nice to see the monsters, even though it was kind of cartoonish. At least you got kind of a good idea of what type of monsters lived in Midian and how they looked and how they were all so different. Whereas Boone looks like a human, but we see that he transforms. A lot of the monsters in Nightbreed, at least the movie, versus Cabal, they like look like monsters all the time. Like they're very hideous appearances. And I liked how you saw that. And it was like great makeup and great prosthetics and stuff. So that was a really good job done by that department. So I could see the value in that. And I thought that was interesting just to see all the designs. That was kind of neat. The spiked. I agree. The spiked woman, that was cool. That wasn't really described in the book, like per se, I don't believe. But like I said, the guy with the face, what was his name? The character we were just talking about?
Narcissus.
I didn't like the way he looked. And the way he acted. That was a con. But more merits, I would say, is I think I liked how In the book, you don't really understand why Boone has mental problems, why he even is seeing Decker. It's kind of vaguely talked about, like visions and stuff. Whereas in the movie, he's already dreaming about Midian. He's already like, it's more like he's having almost like these prophecies that he's going to become the Nightbreed, but he doesn't know what to make of them. So really, the thought of Midian doesn't even come in until he's at the hospital in Cabal in the book. He just happens to overhear something about Midian when he's in this other dilemma that's happening. Whereas in the movie Nightbreed, I thought it was interesting that like the idea of Midian, it was Boone's whole problem. He was caught up on the idea of Midian. I thought that was interesting. Like, I'm correct on that, right? Like the book, the book did not go into his mental stuff at all. And it was not Midian that was the mental problem.
Well, you didn't really know he was being plagued by the dreams, but he really didn't understand them. And the whole time Decker is using him, for his own, terrible things that he wants to do or whatever. I mean, it almost brings up the subject, who is the real monster here? I mean,
and that's
just because you look at a
monster,
just because you look like a monster doesn't make you a monster at your heart and core, which we, see, clearly.
Another merit, and this is kind of funny, I like that they didn't go all the way in the jail in Nightbreed the movie, whereas in the book it's like this insane scene where they're having sex even though people are coming after them, and it like they're about to be attacked and they're like, let's just like do it. Like,
it always cracks me up in books or movies that like you're in this horrific situation, apocalyptic, horror, whatever, and people have the time to have this romantic situation happen, and you're like, really? I could see like if you made it out of whatever you're doing, but like the fact that you're in the midst of it, that you're going to stop and do this is just so like unrealistic to
to me too. And I will say, so the pro of Nightbreed the movie is that they cut that scene short, whereas in the book it's super drawn out and graphic, by the way, which doesn't bother me, but I was just like, this would never, like, there's literally people like right outside ready to come get them, and they're like taking the time to do this, and like it's all analyzed in the book. Not saying it's bad, because it really brings Laurie and Boone closer together, and that's when she finds out essentially in the book that she can accept his monster side and be fine with it.
Right.
She wasn't sure if she could before then. When she first saw like his monstrous appearance, his changed not only appearance but like the changed part of him in his soul, she wasn't sure about it. Like she was like, oh, but then like in the jail with this whole big scene, she accepts it both like metaphorically but also physically and literally.
Yes.
Whatever. Yeah, I'm glad the movie didn't go there, because it just would have been so unbelievable and unnecessary.
Well, and I think it would have just like been over the top. Compared with what was going on,
Yeah, so much so. I agree.
Yeah, I was glad that they didn't go there.
They really made the police force in Nightbreed the movie seem really evil and really detestable. They do it in the book as well, but I feel like the actors really did a great job of making them seem pretty detestable. So I thought that was a well done thing about the movie. Overall, like I did like the idea of getting to see Midian, getting a real like good idea of like who lives there, what's going on, what it means to live there. But I do think there's more detail in the book. So overall, the movie definitely has merits. And I think, as you mentioned, the whole idea of like the monster, like the appearance on the outside doesn't have to always match the inside. I think that's the pro of the book and the movie. I think that's the big message you get from both. So even though there's some big differences, and I do prefer the book, you could still see that main message really well, put forward in both iterations of the story. And that's my thoughts on Nightbreed. What about you? That's it?
That's it. That's
all
it.
Right.
That's
so
all I have to say about it.
That was some of our movies, part one. We shared our surprises, our disappointments. And like I said, our big disappointment we're going to start with is Driller Killer, because it was so absurd. But even that has merits. Like, you might think it has no merits. I actually found a few things that I took notes during Driller Killer. I've got to find them, but I did take notes. And there were a few things that I thought were kind of cool and fun, and some funny things.
Like,
but also,
note number one, terrible. Note number two, terrible.
You like get all sarcastic and like fiery about it. I love when you have a passion about something being terrible. It's great. It's one of my favorite things. I don't know why, but I can't wait to dive deep, because me and Kat are really going to get into the reasons why we thought it was like kind of bad, and she thought it was really bad.
There's no kind of in that at all.
Not for her.
No kind of.
It was pretty bad for me, I will say. I'm trying to give it some saving graces, like, whatever. It is what it is. So, like you said earlier. But yeah, I can't wait. We're going to have so much more fun. marathon. But thank you for spending the time today with me, Kat, to talk about all these movies. I know it's been long. You've got your final performance. Like by the time we release this, she'll be done. But it's the day of recording. Her final performance is tonight, and she's taking the time out of a really busy day to do this. So thanks, Kat. I really appreciate you.
Well, thank you, because it's fun. I enjoy it.
A successful marathon for sure. Even if I'm kind of let down from last year, it doesn't mean it still wasn't overall good. And I know you had a good time too overall, even though you had more duds, I think, than last year, but still fun, still good. And I can't wait to keep going into more. And not only thank Kat, because she spent the time with me, but we both thank you guys for spending the time with us, because we know your time is valuable. And this video, I mean, I don't have a running clock going, but I'm sure it's 2 hours long at this point, because we really went into detail. But I think it was a good discussion, and I appreciate you guys watching it, taking the time to really get into it with us. And we really just love interacting with you guys. So if you got any thoughts of any of this that we covered today, any of the movies, drop it in the comments below. If you're watching this through Kat's blog, drop it in her comments of her blog post. By the way, guys, if you're not subscribed to Kat's blog already, please do so. I will link it down below. It's a great blog. She talks about all things movies, pop culture, books, but also real life stuff, like how to manage your time and how to track it and why you should. I like that, because we talked about that in our readathon and why that could be important for getting things done, like reading more books. She'll tell you how with like some of the things she's done and figured out from, you know, helpful stuff she's read and learned. All right, guys, but for this time, like I said, that's it for us. Till next time, Kat, what can they do?
Keep on killing it.
Keep on killing it. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.